where the jury comes in.
I asked her just briefly before Mr. Joe testified. And the reason for that is Defendant Menendez testified from both juries regarding the statement that he allegedly made to Mr. Gaudreau some months before the killings. They now are attempting to, by extrinsic evidence, corroborate Lyle Menendez. I would cite, I've given to counsel and I've cited the court the cases of People versus Alcalde and People versus Gordon. And basically, what those cases stand for is People versus Alcalde, 24 Cal 2nd 177. Attempts to bribe a witness are relevant to impeach the witness. And People versus Gordon at 206 page 29. Once the defendant takes a stand, he puts into issue his truth and integrity and may be impeached by such evidence in the same manner as any other witness. So my position is that since the defendant testified in front of both juries, including the blue jury, his credibility is an issue. And the fact that he has attempted to bribe a witness in the form of Jamie Pisarcik should come from the Erik Menendez jury. And so I wanted to just point that out before Mr. Gaudreau takes a stand for extensive evidence in that regard.
Your Honor, may I also
Yes.
add that Mr. Gaudreau was asked questions about this conversation in the Chinese restaurant in front of both juries, but that question was on, the subject matter was totally unknown to the prosecution, and at that time we weren't in a position to object that it should only be in front of the Lyle Menendez jury. So that whole subject matter was only in front of both juries because the defense chose to put it on in front of both juries. And we didn't have notice of it, not that we should have, but we didn't know that it should have been in front of one jury or the other.
And what is that?
Well,
Proof.
so if the defense chose to bring it out in front of both juries and now is choosing to use it to support Lyle Menendez's credibility, then impeachment on, certainly not, it's not a collateral matter that he tried to bribe a witness in this case. So impeachment of that sort should be in front of both juries. If they made the election to put this on in front of both juries.
All right, the court has previously ruled that that evidence, in whatever form it was offered by the parties, and it was up to the parties to decide how that evidence would be introduced. And I'm referring to the incident in the jail relating to the Lyle Menendez, Jamie Pisarcik conversation that was the subject of an interview with the prosecution. That would be received only before the Lyle Menendez jury. And I made that decision under Section 352 of the Evidence Code, and understanding that it did have strong or potentially strong probative value to impeach the credibility of Lyle Menendez and also to demonstrate consciousness of guilt. The court, in analyzing it, concluded that that evidence, if it is offered in whatever form the parties chose to offer it, would be received only as it related to the defendant Lyle Menendez, since it was conduct after the arrest, after he was incarcerated for a considerable period of time, and was the product of whatever thought processes he went through at the time he had that conversation with Ms. Pisarcik. And because of that, it relates to the defendant Lyle Menendez. And although it could reflect upon his credibility and could also be argued that it is strong evidence to attack his credibility, the court finds that under Section 352 of the Evidence Code, that the potential prejudice of this sort of evidence by one defendant or engaged in by one defendant is too substantial when offered to the trier of fact involving the other defendant. And therefore, the court will preclude it by reason of the fact we have two juries. The court will preclude that evidence from being heard by the Erik Menendez jury. And anything else now before we proceed?
Well, in that vein, it can be done in the evidence be presented only then to the Lyle Menendez jury.
Did the parties wish to be heard on that issue?
Well, Your Honor, we would object to that because he was questioned about this very issue in front of both juries without objection. Ms. Lansing had asked, did he, referring to Lyle, ever tell you that he and his brother had been molested by his father? The witness testified, no, he didn't. He denied remembering that he told Ms. Lansing that. He denied recalling that he told anybody else that. He goes on to say that Lyle never said anything to him about his being molested as a child. And we have now the ability to impeach him on that issue, which was litigated without objection by the people in front of both juries. So I don't think we should be in the position, the Erik Menendez defense, where a witness is allowed to go unimpeached when there's compelling evidence to impeach him, which was unobjected to in front of our jury. It isn't just being offered to corroborate Lyle Menendez, but it's also being offered to impeach this witness.
In the context of the testimony of Mr. Goudreau, it obviously has only relevance and probative value to the extent that it corroborates the testimony of Lyle Menendez. To the nature of this evidence is clearly being offered for that purpose and not for the purpose of impeaching Mr. Goudreau. And it begs the issue to argue that that's why it's being offered.
Ultimately, it's to corroborate Lyle Menendez, but the court may recall we did not want Lyle Menendez testifying in front of our jury at all. But now, since we were
No, but I do recall that you wanted the testimony of the cousin who was in receipt of a complaint by Lyle Menendez to testify before both juries, and this is evidence of a similar nature, that you wanted and want evidence of prior complaints to be heard by both juries so that they could deal with that and use that evidence as not just corroborative of the testimony of Lyle Menendez, but as independent evidence that these events had occurred. And clearly that's the use that the defense would make of these pieces of evidence, that since these matters were complained of, they must have happened, and therefore this is evidence of it.
Yes, but my point is that Lyle Menendez did testify in front of our jury about these issues. His credibility was attacked, and we should be entitled to have this evidence in front of both juries as well. The credibility of both defendants as to the veracity of the history of abuse that they related was attacked. I mean, it wasn't examined by the people's strategy, but it certainly was attacked just by dint of the question, well, the only people who could confirm or deny what you're saying are dead. Isn't that right? So I think it's squarely an issue before both juries.
That was a question asked of your client. But regardless regardless of that, it's quite clear that the prosecution did attempt to impeach the credibility of Lyle Menendez. And although not directly asserted by the prosecution, it's their implied argument that any allegations or contentions of sexual abuse are recent fabrications and are in the nature of evidence offered solely to exonerate or mitigate the nature of the offense. And as such, the defense is entitled to rehabilitate the witness, and that attack occurred before both juries. And the defense is correct that Lyle Menendez testified before both juries because the prosecution sought that the proceedings be conducted in such a fashion. So at this point, the rehabilitation should be before both juries as well. And I don't equate one piece of evidence with the other. They're completely different. One occurred prior to the killing of the parents, prior to the incarceration. Motives and interests were much different at the time the Goudreau conversation occurred versus the incident in the jail. So just because the court has ruled that one could not be brought out before both juries does not mean that the other should only be brought out before the one jury. Therefore, the people's request to limit that evidence to just the Erik Menendez, strike that to the Lyle Menendez jury, is denied, and the court would permit that evidence before both juries.
I intend to do some more research on this. Would the court allow me to do that so that before rebuttal comes, I'll be able to revisit this?
When you talk about rebuttal, you're talking about whether or not you can introduce the Pisarcik statement before both juries?
I have some more research I think.
Well, if you have some case that deals with the unique circumstances of this trial with two juries and the nature of the evidence being introduced and sought to be introduced, I'd be glad to see it, but I kind of doubt that you will.
See what I can find.
All right. Anything else now before we resume?
Your Honor, I just wanted to notify the court, I would like a brief 402 hearing before Dr. Tyler testifies.
All right, you did mention that at the sidebar, and we'll permit you to do that. I'm unfamiliar of the specifics of her testimony, and we'll do that after we finish with the testimony of the next two witnesses who will testify before both juries. It's my understanding from what has been presented to the court at the sidebar that the next witness, Dr. Tyler, would testify only before the Erik Menendez jury, and there's a time estimate of 1/2 to 1 day for her testimony, 1 to 1.5 days. Perhaps we'll get a better feel for that depending on this in limine motion that the prosecution has.
I have a witness that's been hanging around now for 3 days. I want to get him on his brief. That's Andy Conant in front of the blue jury. So I'd like to have him testify this morning if we can, and then we can do the eliminator.
All right, that's fine. The only reason I brought up the schedule relating to Dr. Tyler is that at some point we have to make a decision relating to when to have the gold jury return, since she will only be testifying before the blue jury. But we can defer that until a little later, until perhaps after this in limine motion, so that I at least have some opportunity to know what it is that she's going to say. All right, if we're otherwise ready, then we're going to proceed with both juries, and we'll have both juries come in.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
We're ready to proceed. We have both juries in the courtroom, and the defense may call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Mr. Donovan Goudreau.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yeah.
Please take the stand and state your name for the record.
Donovan Goudreau,
Spell your last
Goodreau.
Mr. Goudreau, you were here.
Wait, hold on a second. We have one juror who's. You okay?
Okay.
All right, let's proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goudreau, you were here in court on July 26, 1993 as a prosecution witness. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And at that time, I believe that you told us about your friendship with Lyle Menendez. Do you remember?
Yes.
And I asked you if there was a conversation which took place in a Chinese restaurant.
Yes.
Do you remember? And did such a conversation take place?
Yes.
Was that in May of 1989, approximately?
Late April, early May.
And can you tell me what the mood was of this conversation in the Chinese restaurant? What was going on?
I'd known Lyle for several months up to that point. And we had spent a lot of time together, bonded as friends, and got to know each other very well. It came towards the end of the school year. We were both making plans for the summer, future plans together. We decided to have dinner somewhere off of Palmer Square, some Chinese food place. It was late at night.
Let me ask a question. At the time that you were having the conversation, were there a lot of people in the restaurant? Or was it,
I think when we first went in, it was clearing out. It was late at night. And then as the night went on, as dinner finished, I think it was empty, with only the staff waiting for us to leave.
okay. And were the chairs put up on the table? That-
Yeah, I think actually the chairs were on the table.
Okay. And what type of conversation were you and Lyle Menendez having at that time?
I forget how it started, but it was along the lines of, we know everything about each other, and Hal asked if there was anything about me he didn't know, and I mentioned that I was abused.
Now, you mentioned this in sort of an offhand way now. Was that a very big thing for you to reveal at the time?
I had never told anybody that I was abused.
Now, why were you telling Lyle Menendez at this time?
Well, I felt really close to him, and then I felt like, he showed an interest in me and wanted to know everything about me, and also I felt the time was right for me to tell someone.
Okay. And how did you feel in talking about your own abuse?
It wasn't easy. I didn't think it was going to be.
Okay. And what did you tell him had happened to you?
Objection, hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth of what is said, just to reflect the conversation. You may proceed.
I can't remember word for word, but it was something along the lines that I was abused when I was very young, and that it kind of changed the course of my life, kind of.
Did you tell him who had abused you?
I can't recall if I did or not.
Who was it that had abused you?
It's a friend of my father's,
A male or a female?
male.
And were you emotional in describing this to Lyle?
The memory is somewhat blurred, but I do remember, I think, leaving the table, not being able to control my emotions.
And how did Lyle respond to this?
He was, he's pretty quiet. He's a great listener, and anything pertaining to me or something of this, he was just very quiet. He gave me all the time I needed to answer the question, and he seemed somewhat emotional about it.
Why do you say he seemed emotional about it?
I can't remember exactly why, but I just know that he reacted strongly towards me saying that. It wasn't, I would have remembered if he would have changed the subject or, looked like he was not believing me.
Do you remember saying that Lyle seemed very shaken?
I don't remember saying that, but that's a pretty good response.
And do you remember saying that tears were welling in his eyes, in Lyle's eyes?
Objection.
Overall,
Do you remember saying that tears were welling in Lyle's eyes?
Yes, I do.
What did you think about the way he reacted to this information you were giving him?
That's a tough question because we had known each other for so long, and we both knew about each other's fathers, and our fathers are very oppressive. And since the very first night we met, we talked about how hard they were pushing us and how much of a driving force they were in our lives. And so at the time, maybe through some intuition, I might have thought that, he was reacting either kindly to me because of my past or whether he was, feeling the same way himself.
Do you remember saying that you were shocked at how emotional he was?
I don't remember saying that, but that sounds like something I would have said.
Okay. Were you shocked at how emotional he was?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You never know what to expect when you tell someone something like that.
And did that cause you to believe that something similar may have happened to Lyle?
Absolutely.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
What did that cause you to believe?
That he may have had similar experiences.
Okay. And did he say anything to you about having had a similar experience?
Not that I recall, no.
Did he say anything to you about his father having molested both him and his brother?
No, I would have remembered that.
You would remember that if he said that.
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
that correct? Did you ever tell anyone else that Lyle had told you that he had been molested by his father and his brother had also?
Obviously, I heard the tape, so I know that I may have mentioned it later on.
Okay, and to whom did you mention it?
Bob Rand?
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to play the tape. I'd like to mark as our next exhibit a tape, which is 293, and a transcript as 294.
Those exhibits will be marked.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach and play the tape?
Let's get the transcripts distributed first here. All right. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Boudreau, do you remember when you testified in July 26th, on July 26, 1993, as a prosecution witness, you said that you had never told anybody that Lyle Menendez had made the statement to you?
Yes.
You remember that? So I take it you were mistaken at that time. Is that correct?
Obviously.
Where he had at one point mentioned that Erik was being abused sexually.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go off on that, but I was kind of scared what's going to come up in trial.
We will. Yeah.
That's it.
We will. No, I don't know. I don't know that, but
Yeah.
but
Well, I had heard.
how did that conversation start?
We were at a Chinese food restaurant towards the end in early May, and I think it's before he found out about my lies. And he said it was probably like, let's go have Chinese food tonight. We're best friends. We sat there and he says, I know everything about you. You're my best friend. I love you. You know what I think it might have been? Because I think it might have been he found out a little bit about me, but he didn't believe it. He didn't want to believe it. He wanted to come back to me and see if I would tell him the truth. Or at least
Testing
he
you.
was testing me. But still, at the same time, he was 100% you couldn't, it was real. You couldn't fake the kind of emotion he was giving me right then. And we're sitting there, and he says, I know everything about you, my best friend. I love you as much as my brother, if not more. He said, we're family. As far as I see from here out, we're family. My two greatest concerns are my mom and my brother. And I try to help them as much as I can. And I worry if anything happens to me, if they're going to be okay. He takes care of his brother. He just looks out for his brother. It's his biggest concern. And he said, if anything happens to me, I need you to help take care of my brother for me. And if anything happens, to you, I'll take care of your mom and brother for you. I mean, these kind of things were said back and forth across the table. And I want to be together forever. Anything can come between us, anybody, any girl, anything, just us. And he says, is there anything I don't know about you? And I said, as a matter of fact, there is. When I was a kid, I was told I was molested. And in front of my father's, we were spending the weekend at a business friend's house. And telling the story, I'm all choked up because I can't believe I've never told anyone the story. And
that was really personal. Yeah.
And then there he was, tears, 20 minutes in speak. And I'm telling him this whole story about, I can still remember, the pictures on the wall and the color of the room and the carpet and the time it was, and, everything about it. It's very clear in my mind. And just bringing it all back up, and I was choked up. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, just wiping tears off my face. He came back and he told me about his father. And I guess maybe one of the reasons we were friends is because we had so much in common with his the way we suffered, experience. And then to bring this into the relationship as far as an experience we both shared that we'd never spoken to or about to anybody.
So basically, he said that his father had been abusing Eric.
Yeah, him and Eric. And yeah, and we take baths and stuff. I just, man, you're at this. It's weird because you felt we weren't drinking. We were just sitting there eating, and the whole place was full. The chairs were up on the table. The guys just didn't know the wait for us to leave. And he's telling me this. I could have fallen out of the back of my seat. He's telling me about him and his brother, and his brother has been the most affected by it. He was younger, more impressionable. I can't really go into it.
Mr. Bridge, do you recognize your voice?
Yes,
And who's the other voice on the tape?
Bob Rand.
And was that an interview you had with him in March of 1992?
I can't recall when I did the interview.
You talked to Mr. Rand on several occasions, is that correct?
Yes,
And you were interviewed by several other reporters, is that correct?
yes.
And having listened to the tape now, does that refresh your recollection?
Of the events?
Yes.
No, I heard the tape last time, and it doesn't help me. I know that I said that, but I just can't recall all the events surrounding it.
Okay. Well, do you think when you told Mr. Rand that in March of 1992, you were telling him the truth?
I really can't recall why I would have said that, whether it was truth or not.
You mean you might have just made that up?
It's possible with knowing Glenn Stevens and Bob Rand that I may have put that together. I'm not sure how I came to that.
And
conclusion.
how is knowing Glenn Stevens and Bob Rand, how would that have created the situation?
Well, unlike LA, New York, something along the lines of this trial goes somewhat unnoticed. And there was an anonymity there. And I didn't know a lot about the trial, only what maybe Glenn Stevens, who I had contact with, and Bob Rand may have told me over a period of years. And
Now, is it your testimony that Bob Rand told you that Lyle and Eric had been molested by their father?
oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not sure where I heard it. I
Okay.
can't say who I heard it from.
Is it your testimony that Glenn Stevens told you that Lyle and Eric had been molested by their father?
It may have been him. It may have been Bob Rand.
Do you remember saying that you were very surprised when you met with Glenn Stevens after this interview with Bob Rand, and he seemed to know about Lyle and Eric having been molested?
Objection, since that's not evidence.
No.
Like a foundation.
Let me go back, if I may, Your Honor. Then. You were interviewed by reporters for the Los Angeles Times Magazine at one point. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you then went to Princeton to have your picture taken there as part of the article that they were publishing with regard to this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you went to Princeton to be photographed, you ran into Glenn Stevens. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you remember telling Bob Rand that you were so surprised when you ran into Glenn Stevens because he also seemed to know that Lyle and Eric had been molested?
I don't remember saying that. I remember talking to him, and I don't remember anything about that.
If I showed you a transcript of that part of the tape with Bob Rand, would that refresh your recollection?
No, because this obviously didn't, so I can't say that would.
So if you had told Bob Rand that this was the first time that you'd seen Glenn since you were thrown out of the dorm room in Princeton, and that you were so surprised because Glenn said, "Did you know about the molestation?" And you told Bob Rand that you were surprised that Glenn also knew.
Objection.
Do you remember saying something like that to Bob Rand?
Objection calls for hearsay, lack of foundation.
No, I'm just asking if he remembers saying that.
Objection sustained. The following question.
Do you remember telling Bob Rand that when Glenn Stevens told you he knew about the molestation, you were surprised because you already knew it?
No.
Objection, lack of foundation, you can strike the answer.
No, I don't.
Aaron, if I could have a minute, I have the remainder of the tape and I can play that part for Mr. Boudreau.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Mr. Boudreau, rather than take the time to find on the tape this particular section, I'm going to read you a transcript of what's on the tape and see if you remember saying that. And I believe there'll be a stipulation that this is a transcript of the tape, although it may not be 100% accurate. We're going to admit the tape. Is that correct?
Yes, there would be a stipulation that this is a somewhat accurate transcript.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Boudreau, on the tape, it says basically this. The first time I'd seen Glenn, and you're referring to this incident where you had your photograph taken. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Said we were walking over in front of Chuck's, and he all of a sudden was walking out of Chuck's. All of a sudden walking out of Chuck's was Glenn and this girl, and he looks up and he goes, "Hey, hey." Do you remember that happening?
I don't remember what he said, but I remember seeing him walking out of Chuck's.
Okay. But of course, there was a smile on his face, and he was immediately elated. We shook hands, and this photographer got a picture of us together. Was that correct? Did that happen?
I don't remember shaking hands. I do remember him being happy to see me.
And do you remember being photographed?
I remember the photograph, but I don't remember the picture actually being taken.
Then you say it was the picture in the Los Angeles Times magazine. Is that the photograph you're referring to?
Yes.
And we were in there, and the guy wanted to go. So I told him I would just take the train back to town. Did you take the train back to town?
I must have.
And when the photographer, and then there's a part of the tape we can't hear, then the sentence goes on, Glenn and myself stayed there. Did you stay and talk to Glenn after your photo was taken?
Yes, I did.
And Glenn just freaked me out because I thought I was the only one who'd heard about that or knew about that. And all of a sudden, Glenn told me the same thing. He said, "Did you know about the molestation and all that?" Do you remember that?
No,
You remember telling Mr. Rand that?
not clearly, no.
But if your voice is on the tape,
Obviously, sure.
then it would have been something you said. Is that correct?
Sure.
And he brought it up again, and I'd almost forgotten about it. And he brought it up again, and I just couldn't believe it. I said, really? I said, I didn't know about that, and it was kind of strange for him to tell me because I was wondering under what circumstances he would tell Glenn. Now, that's referring to Lyle telling Glenn. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did it seem surprising to you that Glenn would have been told by Lyle?
Objection calls for speculation and irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you think that the relationship that Lyle had with you was much closer than the relationship he had with Glenn?
Objection irrelevant.
Overall.
I wasn't sure because I hadn't seen either one of them in a long time.
But at the time that you were all at Princeton together, was your relationship with Lyle much closer than
Oh,
Lyle's
absolutely.
with Glenn? And then the tape goes on to say, and you know, I thought he was having problems. You know, Lyle was scared too. The house at Calabasas had this huge bathtub, and he was like fearing this thing. You remember saying anything about a bathtub?
No.
But if your voice is on the tape, you would have been the one to say it. Is that correct?
Yes.
To like God's end, they didn't like the house at all. Yeah. So I remember Glenn told me that later. That kind of brought it back up. That made me think about the whole hatred thing and about how he hated his father. And he told me, and then Mr. Rand's voice comes on and says he would go on and on about how much he respected his father. And the tape goes on from there. Do you remember having that conversation with Mr. Rand?
No.
What is your position with regard to where you got the information about Lyle and Erik having been molested by their father? Do you know where that information came from?
After I testified last time, I thought a lot about it, and the only people I was in contact with were Bob Rand and Glenn Stevens.
And yet this part of the tape seems to indicate that you already knew about it, about the molestation when Glenn revealed it. Is that correct?
Yes, it sounds that way.
Okay. So if you already knew about it when Glenn brought it up, then Glenn would not have been the source of the information. Is that correct?
Objection calls for.
I have no idea.
Witness.
Overall, the answer is stand.
And what's your testimony with regard to Mr. Rand? Did he tell you
Tell me,
that Lyle and Erik had been molested by their father, or did you tell him?
I have no idea.
Well, when you listen,
Obviously, I told him, but it seems like there was a couple places where he seemed to be leading me, and I'm unclear about whether I might have come onto that assumption myself or been.
well, when you say there's a couple places where he seems to be leading you, he says to you at the beginning of the tape, we didn't mention yesterday, you got off on, and then there's a part of the tape again here, where he had at one point mentioned that Erik was being abused sexually. And you said, yeah, I don't want to go off into that. I know I'm scared it's going to come up at trial. And Mr. Rand says, well, how did that conversation start? And then you proceed to tell the entire story of the Chinese restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And during the time you're telling that story, Mr. Rand is not supplying you any information. Is that correct?
Objection is since fact not in evidence calls for conclusion.
Overall.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, during the time that you are telling Mr. Rand the story
Mhm.
of your conversation in the Chinese restaurant, it's just you talking. Isn't that correct?
No, I'm aware of that.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And at the end, Mr. Rand says, so basically his father had been Mo, and that's the end of that. And you interrupt and you say, yes. Mr. Rand says, abusing Erik, and you say, yeah, him and Erik. And Mr. Rand says, both Lyle also? And you say, yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So are you suggesting that Mr. Rand gave you this information?
I already answered that earlier. I have no idea where I may have come up with that.
So you're not saying Mr. Rand gave you that information?
I'm not sure if he did or not.
And you're not saying Glenn Stevens gave you that information?
He may have also, I'm not sure.
But then how would you have said that you were surprised that Glenn knew it when you already knew it? If the information came from Glenn?
I don't remember saying I was surprised. I know you read the transcript, and I do remember hearing that, but I still can't remember.
So if your voice is on the tape saying that, though, that would have been something you said.
Yes.
Do you have any other sources, possible sources for where that information would have come from?
In New York City, the media didn't really cover the trial or any aspects of it.
Do you remember testifying, and Your Honor, at this time I'm reading from volume 55, July 27th, 1993, page 7994, starting at line 9. Question is, the other thing you said was you got information about the case from Mr. Rand and Mr. Stevens. Answer, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're the only two people I had contact with. Question, and did you ever have any conversations with Mr. Stevens about whether Lyle or Erik abused their parents? Your answer was, were abused by their parents. Your answer was no. And then my question was, so the information couldn't have come from Mr. Stevens, is that correct? Your answer was, I'm not saying I don't know where the information came from. I obviously said it. And then then you were asked on page 7995, question, and do you remember having any conversations with him, meaning Mr. Stevens, with regard to whether there was any sexual abuse in the family? You answered no. Is that correct?
What page, counsel? I'm sorry.
That was 7995, line 17.
Could you repeat that question?
Yes. You were asked, do you remember having any conversations with him, meaning Mr. Stevens, on that occasion, which was the time you had the picture taken, with regard to whether there was any sexual abuse in the family? Your answer was no, you didn't remember any such conversation. Do you remember testifying to that under oath?
Yes.
And yet your voice is on the tape indicating you had such a conversation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And then later on, page 7996 at line 27, I asked you, and at the time that you and Mr. Stevens were photographed together, did you have any conversation at that time as to whether Lyle and Erik, whether Lyle had ever revealed to either of you anything about the abuse in his family, the sexual abuse of either him or of Erik? And you then say, I can't remember if we did or not. So is it fair to say that you don't remember?
Yes.
But you do remember for sure the conversation in the Chinese restaurant. Is that correct?
Parts of it, yes.
And you do remember for sure that you revealed your own abuse?
Yes.
And you do remember for sure Lyle's very strong emotional reaction to that?
Yes.
And you do remember for sure that you assumed, based on his reaction, that the same thing had happened to him?
Yes.
You just are not sure about the words?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any examination on behalf of Erik Menendez?
No, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Goodrow, do you know on how many occasions you spoke to Mr. Rand in person?
Several.
And do you know in which year was the first time that you spoke to Mr. Rand?
Oh, it had to be probably within months of the arrest. So spring, early summer, 90.
And what was your understanding as to the purpose why were you providing information to Mr. Rand?
He was a reporter. He was asking me questions.
So the first time in your memory that you spoke to Mr. Rand would have been within a few months of the arrest of the Menendez brothers. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
And I believe that the foundation for the tape that we've heard in court, Exhibit 293, is that was made sometime in the spring of 1992. Is that your understanding of when that tape recording was made?
Yes.
To your knowledge, first of all, when you made the tape recording with Mr. Rand, was there a day of interviews which preceded the day that was taped?
Yes.
And the day of interviews which came before the taped interview, that day was not taped. Is that correct?
I don't remember. I do remember it was a 2-day process. I'm not sure which day the recording was on.
And do you recall actually seeing or being aware of a tape recorder during one or both of those days that you spoke to Mr. Rand?
Yes.
Okay, so you were aware of the fact that you were being taped.
Yes.
Okay, and between 1990, at the first time you spoke to Mr. Rand in person, and early 1992, when the tape was made, do you know on how many other occasions you spoke to Mr. Rand in person?
Again, maybe 10 on the phone.
So you would have spoken to him about 10 times on the phone?
Yes.
And so the only two face-to-face meetings you had with him then were the one in 1990 and the one in 1992?
No, I'm sure there was 1 or 2 other ones. I just can't remember time or place.
Now, the 10 or so phone calls that you had during the first and then this tape recorded meeting, were those for the purpose of getting information from you?
Yes.
And during the course of time that you knew Mr. Rand, did Mr. Rand ever give you any information about the Menendez case?
All the time.
And was that something that happened fairly frequently, or was that something that happened only on occasion?
Pretty much every phone call or every meeting.
And now I believe then the indication is that in early or sometime in 1992, when this tape was made, that was when the subject of the molestation was discussed between yourself and Mr. Rand. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
It was the first time that you discussed the subject of molestation during the meeting that's taped?
I have no idea.
All right. But prior to that time, you had been receiving information from Mr. Rand. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe you indicated at some point you went to the Princeton area to have your photograph taken for another article which was being prepared by reporters from the Los Angeles Times. Is that correct?
Yes.
And during that period of time, you actually spoke with Mr. Stevens, correct?
Yes, I did.
And was that the first time, I think you testified that you'd seen Mr. Stevens since you had been ejected from Lyle Menendez's room at Princeton in the spring of 1989?
Yes.
Do you remember in which month and year it was that you had your picture taken at Princeton?
No,
Do you remember what year it was?
I have no idea.
Okay. Had you already met Mr. Rand at the time that you interviewed with the reporters from the Los Angeles Times?
Yes, because I remember seeing Mr. Rand before I went to Princeton area. Yeah, I guess that'd be the order.
Were you ever aware of an article, either by reading it or by having someone tell you about it, that appeared in Vanity Fair magazine in October of 1990?
Oh, yes.
All right. Now, how was it that you were aware of the Vanity Fair article?
I remember a friend of mine may have mentioned it, and I went and purchased it and read it.
So you actually read the Vanity Fair article?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember mention in the Vanity Fair article dealing with the subject matter of sex within the Menendez family?
I don't remember in the initial reading, but I do remember someone referring to it as the first time that molestation had been talked about.
And do you recall that you were able to buy the Vanity Fair article on the newsstands, or had the article already appeared and been taken off the newsstands at the time that you read it? In other words, did you read it in October of 1990?
I'm sure I read it shortly after, within weeks of it coming out.
Now, I believe you've indicated that you have no present recollection of Lyle Menendez telling you in the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant in Princeton, that he and his brother had been molested by their father. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember testifying previously that that was the kind of information you think you would have recalled?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And is that still your position here today, that if he had told you that you think you would have remembered it?
Yes, it is.
In addition to reading the Vanity Fair article and speaking to Mr. Rand, do you have any recollection now of getting any other information about the Menendez case from any other source between the time of the arrests and the time that you made the tape with Mr. Rand?
Not that I remember.
Now, during the time that you were acquainted with Lyle Menendez, that would have been from February of '89 until May of '89. Did Mr. Lyle Menendez ever mention anything to you about a bathtub being constructed in the Calabasas home?
Not that I remember.
When you were here visiting for the week that he flew you out, did you ever go visit the construction site of the Calabasas home?
No.
May I have a moment, please, Your Honor? I'm going to be referring now to the transcript, volume 55, July 27th, 1993, starting at page 7988. Mr. Goudreau, do you remember having a hearing outside the presence of the jury where we asked you questions in July about the subject matter?
No. I don't remember exactly. I don't remember whether the jury was here or not.
Okay. Do you remember being questioned about this, though, in July of this year?
Sure.
Do you remember being asked the following question and giving the following answer at lines 3 through 6? Now, Mr. Goudreau, did Lyle Menendez ever tell you that he had been sexually abused by either of his parents? And your answer was no, never. Did you give that testimony? Do you recall giving it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And is it still your position today that you have no memory of him telling you that?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, Mr. Goudreau, when you were living at Princeton, you told some stories about yourself that were untrue. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe that in the transcript, which was prepared as a result of this tape, Exhibit 293, you talked about the fact that Lyle Menendez had found out about your lies, and you referred to them as lies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I believe you indicated on direct examination that you had a reaction in the Chinese restaurant to the way that Lyle Menendez reacted to your news of your having been molested. Do you understand my question?
I reacted to the way he was reacting? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you have a memory sitting here today of how you reacted or how you felt after seeing Lyle Menendez's reaction to your news?
Not exactly, but I do remember leaving the table, and I think I was somewhat emotional.
Okay, and was your emotion caused by the news that you had told to Lyle Menendez, or was it caused by the fact of how he had reacted to your news, or both?
Probably the news that I had told.
All right. And
I'm going to object and move to strike the speculation.
Sustain the answer strike.
do you remember testifying in July on July the 27th, council line, page 7990, lines 5 through 9? Question, okay, what did you think when Lyle Menendez reacted the way he did to what you told him? Answer, I was shocked. He was quite emotional when I told him what had happened. Do you remember testifying to that?
Yes.
Is that testimony accurate as to how things happened that night in the Chinese restaurant?
Absolutely.
Now, from how he reacted, did you in your own mind make any deductions about what his reaction meant?
Yes.
And what did you in your own mind deduce at that time?
That maybe the same thing had happened to him.
And do you have a specific memory sitting here today of thinking that in the Chinese restaurant? In other words, do you remember that when you were in the Chinese restaurant, you thought, boy, maybe something happened to him by the way he's reacting?
I can't say how specific it was, but somewhere along the lines where I do remember feeling that way.
And then after you had this conversation in the Chinese restaurant, and after Lyle Menendez was arrested, you were interviewed by Mr. Rand some few months after the arrest in 1990, correct?
Yes.
And then sometime around October of 1990, you read the Vanity Fair article in which there were allusions made to possible sex within the family. Do you recall?
When did the article come out?
In October of 1990.
Yes, I did.
And then I believe you indicated that you did go to Princeton to have your picture taken, and you spoke with Glenn Stevens at that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I take it then, it's your testimony, you have no recollection sitting here today of what you, Mr. Stevens, talked about during that picture-taking session in Princeton. Is that correct?
I remember bits and pieces, but nothing substantial.
And then it wasn't until 1992 that you and Mr. Rand actually discussed the subject matter, which is contained with the tape of Exhibit 293. Is that correct?
If the tape was done yeah, you're right.
Now, during the course of your friendship with Lyle Menendez, did he in fact ever tell you that he hated his father?
Hated his father. He might not use such strong words, but there was definitely some dislike for some things his father had done.
All right, I believe that in the second portion of the tape that was actually read to you by Ms. Lansing, there was reference in there to Lyle hating his father. That's something that you told to Mr. Rand. Do you remember telling Mr. Rand that?
No.
Okay, would it have been accurate for you to have told Mr. Rand that Lyle Menendez hated his father?
I would have probably summed it all up and just said he hated his father, but that would have been correct.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
I believe you were asked some questions at page 7995 of volume 55. Question at line 26. Question, it could have come from Mr. Stevens, meaning information. Your answer was yes, it could have. I don't remember hearing it or where I heard it from, is what I'm saying. And then the next question was, but the only places it could have come from, I think you said, were either Mr. Stevens or Mr. Rand. Your answer was quite possibly yes. Next question, or from Lyle Menendez. Answer, I don't think he ever mentioned anything about his father abusing him. Question, that you remember or you're not sure. Your answer was, I'm pretty sure he never did. Do you recall giving that testimony in court in July of 1993?
Yes.
And you indicated there that the only source of the information could have been Mr. Stevens or Mr. Rand. Do you remember? I just read that part to you.
Yeah, possibly.
And in addition
I'm
to,
going to object to misstating the evidence that the only sources could have been.
Rephrase the question, please.
I believe the question asked of you by Ms. Lansing was, but the only places it could have come from, I think you said, were either Mr. Stevens or Mr. Rand. Your answer, quite possibly yes. Do you remember giving that testimony?
Yes.
And in addition to Mr. Stevens or Mr. Rand, you also had information from the Vanity Fair article. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Yes, no. Mr. Goodrow, you also had information from Lyle Menendez, is that correct?
About,
Well, you were asked if you had information from Mr. Rand and Mr. Stevens in the Vanity Fair article. Is that correct? Did you have information from Mr. Stevens?
I'm not sure.
Did you have information from Mr. Rand?
I'm not sure if it was,
Did you have information from Mr. Menendez?
I don't think so.
But you're not sure?
Not sure.
Mrs. Bazanich asked you about the comment about whether Lyle hated his father, and you said that would have been a short way to explain it. Can you tell me what you meant by that?
Well, he would have expressed it differently. He wouldn't have just come out and said, I hated my father. He would have mentioned something specific. Maybe mentioned that he disliked how his father had handled something, and he wouldn't have come out and said, I hated my father.
Did he love his father?
Yes.
Did he respect his father?
Yes.
Was he very troubled by the way his father had treated his mother with regard to an affair?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused. We'll be in recess until 1:30, and if both juries could return at 1:30, we'll resume at that time. Don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 1:30.
Tracy L. Baker,
Spell your last name, please.
Baker.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
How old are you?
24.
And are you currently going to school?
Yes.
And where are you going to school?
Cal State Fullerton.
And are you due to graduate soon?
Yes, I'll graduate in December with a degree in public relations.
And are you also working while you're going to school?
Yeah, I hold 2 jobs. I work as a waitress at a restaurant, as well as I work at the Anaheim Arena that just opened.
Have you had much time to watch this case on television?
To be honest, no. With my 2 jobs in school, I don't have time for much of anything else. So, yeah.
Do you know Lyle and Erik Menendez?
Yes.
And when was it that you first met them?
Around October of 1988.
And for how long were you around them and their family?
Approximately 3 months, off and on. I saw them occasionally on weekends with their parents, and also during the week, going out, movies, whatever.
Okay. So you would have seen them in October?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
And in November?
Yes.
And were you there for Thanksgiving?
Yes, I was.
And was that the last time that you were with the family together?
Yes, that's the last time I saw them.
Okay. So that would have been October and November of 88, is that correct?
Yes.
You a little nervous?
I'm very nervous.
How many times did you have dinner at the Menendez home?
2 or 3.
And were you around Mr. and Mrs. Menendez some other times in addition to those 2 to 3 dinners?
Yes.
And how many other times were you around them?
3 or 4.
And when you were around them, was Lyle always there also?
Yes, always.
And was Erik there?
Yeah, I believe he was also there, all if not 1 or 2 of the times he may not have been, but I believe he was.
Did you spend time at the Menendez home?
Yes.
During one of the times you were at the Menendez home during this time period, did something unusual happen involving Mr. Menendez and a friend of Erik's?
Yes.
Where were you when this event occurred?
I was in the guest house where Lyle basically lived.
And who was there with you?
Just Lyle.
And what happened?
He received a phone call, which I ascertained was his father calling him, by the way he responded. And apparently he had to go to the main house immediately. His father had ordered him to come there. Lyle asked me to stay behind in the house.
All right. And so it was a call from Mr. Menendez to Lyle, telling Lyle to come to the main house?
Yes.
And was it your impression that the call was from the main house?
Yes.
And did you stay in the guest house as you were requested to?
For a short period of time, yes.
And then did something unusual happen?
Yes, I heard loud shouting and slamming of car doors, and I was a little frightened. I didn't know what was happening, so I went to the main house.
Okay. And where in the main house did you go?
I went through the house and out toward the front door, and I was standing right on the front stoop in front of the big front door.
Okay. Who else was there at this time?
Erik, Lyle, Mr. Menendez, I believe a family friend, Ed Fenno, was there, myself, and I believe Mrs. Menendez was also standing in the front foyer, not actually outside. But and also I can't be sure, but I believe Cole, another friend of Lyle's, may have been there. I don't remember.
Okay. And when you got to the front step, what did you see?
I caught the tail end of Mr. Menendez shouting, in fact, almost screaming at a young man who either was getting into or out of a car in the street. And he was screaming at him, "If you come near my home or my family again, I'll kill you." And that was the tail end of that was all that I heard. And
Now, when you heard this, did it sound like he was joking around or did he sound serious?
Deadly serious. I was very put back. I didn't know how to react. I was very uncomfortable, and it scared me.
Okay. And this young man at whom he was yelling, did you see him leave?
Yes, he was leaving the property. I didn't ever see his face.
And after this incident, did Mr. Menendez return to the area where you were standing?
Yes, he did. I believe I think he may have asked me to actually go back to the guest house, but I'm unclear. I know he ordered the boys to go upstairs and wait for him. And at that point,
Just a minute. When you say he ordered the boys to go upstairs, who are you talking about?
Mr. Menendez,
And who are the boys? that he
Eric and
ordered?
Lyle.
Relax.
Okay.
All right, so he ordered Eric and Lyle to go upstairs.
Yes.
What did he say to them?
Something to the effect, go up to my room and I'll wait for me. I'll be right there. And, you know, he was yelling at them. He was obviously very agitated over something one or both of them had done.
Okay.
Objection, move to strike. He was obviously very agitated and everything thereafter as a conclusion on the part of the witness.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. That portion of the answer is stricken.
Now, when he ordered the boys, Eric and Lyle, upstairs, did he appear to still be angry or upset?
Yes.
And what did Lyle and Eric do?
They immediately went upstairs and I was standing there like very often had happened, not knowing what to do, feeling very uncomfortable.
When you say like had very often it happened, you mean in that home or in your life?
No, in that home.
Okay. Now, you said the boys went upstairs.
Yes.
Did Mr. Menendez go upstairs?
Yes, he did.
And did you see Lyle and Eric again that day?
Yes, I saw Lyle.
Okay. How much later? I'm sorry.
It was approximately 20 or 30 minutes later, he came back to the guest house.
And did you get any explanation about what that was all about?
I tried asking basically what had made his father so angry and why they had been gone so long. And he just told me that it really wasn't something that he wanted to discuss with me. It was a friend of Eric's named Craig, and that it was really, that's all he wanted to tell me at that time. And I didn't feel it was appropriate to push it.
Did you have, you said you had dinner at the Menendez home 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
On one of those occasions, did something unusual happen?
Yes.
Okay. Where was this dinner? In the dining room, in the kitchen?
In the dining room.
Okay. And who was present?
Eric, Lyle, Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, myself. I believe that was it.
Okay. And was Mrs. Menendez serving the dinner?
Yes, she was. She was bringing plates of food from the kitchen, placing them on the table. She hadn't yet joined us.
Okay. Now, were you comfortable being there for dinner?
No, I as maybe you can tell, I'm uncomfortable being in front of people I don't know anyway. And parents are always scary when you first meet anyone's parents or family. I felt very uncomfortable. It was a new situation to me. They were in a different social class. I just felt very uncomfortable as it was to begin with. So,
when you say they were a different social class, they were rich?
Yes.
Are you rich?
No.
When Mrs. Menendez put the food on the table, did something unusual happen?
Yes. She was standing behind me, so I don't know if she did something to provoke her husband, but before I knew it, he had stood up and pushed his plates out of the way, very violently, knocking over all sorts of glasses and condiments, whatever were on the table, and said something to her like, "What did you do to this food? Why are you serving this food?" And she remained silent, and she was behind me, and I was just thinking, my goodness, what does a person do here?
And what did a person do here?
I just, yeah.
What did you do here?
I sat there and was quiet and nervous. Jose ordered Eric and Lyle to go wait outside for him, said nothing to me, and ran, I think he maybe went upstairs or somewhere. I don't know where he went. He left the room, and I was left again sitting there thinking, what do I do? And Lyle motioned to me to come with him. I was able to grab my purse and coat and whatever else, and we went out to the front where the cars were parked.
Okay. What did Mrs. Menendez do after Mr. Menendez pushed the food and said, what did you do to the food, or why are you serving this, whatever it was?
She did nothing. She said nothing, and I couldn't see her. She was behind me. I don't even know if she was still standing in the room, to be honest.
Okay. So you went outside?
Yes.
Were Lyle and Eric already out there? Or did they go out there with you?
Well, Erik had kind of gone first, and Lyle was I was straggling along with him, and I was standing. Erik and Lyle had gone off sort of to the side and were whispering.
Could you hear what they were talking about?
No.
And did Mr. Menendez then show up at some point in time?
Yeah, Erik moved to get in the front of the car, and Jose had opened my door for me in the back, and Lyle got around the other side, and Erik had asked his father something, do you think she tried something on purpose or something like this? And I don't exactly know if those are the right, that's just what I remember. And as I was getting in, I'm looking at Lyle like, give me some explanation, what's happening here? And he just very silent, very sort of in his own world.
Did you know what was happening?
I assumed perhaps.
Your Honor, move to strike everything that I assume is being a conclusion and speculation for other witnesses.
The answer, no, will stand. The rest of the answer is stricken as a conclusion.
Did Mr. Menendez seem extremely upset?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Did he join you in the car then at some point in time?
Oh, yes. After he opened the door, he immediately got in the car.
And did you and Mr. Menendez and Erik and Lyle go somewhere?
Yes, we went to eat at a Hamburger Hamlet down, 5 minutes, 10 minutes away.
And did Mrs. Menendez come with you?
No, she did not.
Was there any discussion at the restaurant about what that had been all about?
No.
And once you got to the restaurant, was Mr. Menendez still angry and upset?
No, absolutely the opposite. I found him to be a very charming man. He was very nice to me. We discussed my schooling. In fact, he's the person who made me go to a four-year rather than a regular community college. After that conversation, I went home and wrote an essay about him and turned it in, and I applied to my school to get in. You have to write an essay to enter various colleges, and he was absolutely charming, and just I really was amazed that someone could be so absolutely angry and then so nice to me 20 minutes later. It was just bizarre.
Okay. And the essay that you wrote about him, was it about his success?
Yes.
And on that occasion, did he tell you about his rise from rags to riches?
Not specifically.
Pardon me, objection, irrelevant, sir.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
For the rest of the meal, did Mr. Menendez continue to be charming and
Yes.
attentive to you?
Yes.
Were you ever given an explanation of what happened that night?
No, never. And I didn't ever ask.
Were you at the Menendez home for Thanksgiving dinner that year in 1988?
Yes, I was.
And after the meal, did Lyle leave to take a friend of his home?
Yes, he did.
And did this friend live up in Malibu?
Yes, I think that's correct.
And did Lyle ask you to wait for him while he drove the other friend home?
Yes, he did.
Did you wait for him?
Yes.
Did you receive a phone call from him at some point in time while you were still waiting?
Yes, I'd fallen asleep on the couch, and Kitty came with the cordless phone and said that Lyle was calling from the car, and I took the call.
Okay. And in that conversation, did he ask you to continue to wait for him?
Yes, and I sort of protested. I was ready to go. I was tired, and he insisted that I wait for him, that he wanted to see me, and he apologized for having had to leave. So I did decide to wait.
Okay. And so after you finished your conversation with him, what happened next?
When I was finished talking with him, I got up and went to the kitchen and gave Kitty back the phone because I didn't know where it was supposed to be. And about 5 minutes later, she came in the room and told me that Lyle had changed his mind, that I had just better go ahead and go home.
Okay. And did you question her about that?
I sort of said, are you sure? He was very insistent that I stay. And she said, no, I'm sure. You just better go ahead and go home. But before you do, I'd like to speak with you. And I said, okay.
And so what happened then?
She had asked that she said, Tracy, I have several questions for you. And she sort of had this tone about her already accusing. And I didn't ever feel very comfortable around her anyway. And she asked me, the first question she asked me was, I having a sexual relations with her son? And that's not something anyone's ever asked me. And I was absolutely blown away. And I was brought up to tell the truth, and I said yes. And she was real upset. And
What do you mean she was real upset?
she started, her voice and face started to look more, like she was bubbling inside. And I said to her, how did you want me to answer that question, sort of? And she continued saying that she knew that I had spent the night and she didn't feel that was appropriate.
Had you spent the night?
Yes.
Where had you spent the night?
Once in the guest house, several other times in the maid's room.
Okay, now the times you stayed in the maid's room, that was in the main house, is that correct?
Yes.
And on those occasions, did Lyle stay in the guest house?
Yes.
And why was it that you stayed in the maid's room?
I thought that was appropriate. I lived far away and I didn't want to disrespect anyone in their home. And I know that in my home, it's not appropriate for people to sleep with other people. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I felt that for me, it was best if I stay there to respect their home.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
And so what did she say to you about the relationship that you had with her son?
I don't remember exactly because I was just, my head was swimming because I was so embarrassed and nervous. She basically said that she had seen girls like me before and that whatever I wanted from her son, I wasn't going to get. And if I thought I was going to get a hold of his money, then think twice.
Did she treat you with respect?
No, absolutely not. And about this point, I had pretty much taken what I was going to take. I went to get up, and she literally grabbed my shoulders and shoved me back into the chair. And I'm getting emotional about it now. I have never had anyone physically do anything like that to me. And she just was standing above me, and it was just amazing that some person, I'm talking and rambling, but I was amazed. And I've never had that happen to me in my life and ever in the past or in the future.
After she grabbed you by the shoulders and pushed you back down, did she continue to ask you questions or express her opinions about you?
Yeah, she continued saying that I had borrowed a pair of his sweats or something, and she said something like, oh, you think you could take his things and you think that you fit right in here, and I know where you're from, and he doesn't date girls like you, and well, just bizarre things that a normal person doesn't say to another person. It was very rude, and I grabbed myself. I was almost crying. I grabbed my things. I ran to the guest house. I said, I'm really sorry that I offended you. And, I kind of, whatever I said, I don't remember, just to get out of there. I got in the car and cried all the way home. And I think to this day, my self-esteem is just affected by it. I still feel like I'm not good enough for people.
I move to strike everything after. I think to this day it's being irrelevant to the issues.
Objection sustained. The rest of that portion of the answer and everything following is stricken.
Now, this incident occurred 5 years ago, is that correct?
Yes.
When Mrs. Menendez was having this conversation, if you will, with you, were you arguing back with her?
No.
Were you trying to convince her that you were right or she was wrong, or what were you doing?
I was trying to calm her down. I was saying, I understand what you're saying. I can see your point of view. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you. I better go ahead and get home. Just anything I could do to calm her down so I could leave. And I did. I don't think I calmed her down, but I was kept inching my way. I stood up again and got away, and I left. I don't think that I left probably in a polite way, but.
Now, what was she doing physically while she was yelling at you? Was she standing close to you?
She was standing very close in front of me, so close that she was almost touching my legs, and she waved her arms.
You're clenching your fists here and holding your fists about shoulder level.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what she was doing?
I think so.
And did you tell Lyle about this incident a few days later?
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether or not I should, because I hadn't heard from him, and I was very hurt. I believed what she'd said to me, that he didn't want to see me. And then I got mad, and I said, I'm not going to let any guy or any person treat me this way. And I called him, and I told him why I left, and basically explained sort of what his mom had said.
Was that the end of the relationship?
Yes. I just told him that I didn't feel it was going to really work out. My living so far away, and he was going to be going back to Princeton.
Were you invited to his 21st birthday party, which would have been the January after this Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained. Answer straight.
Did Lyle's girlfriend, Jamie, invite you to his birthday party?
Yes.
Did you refuse to go?
Yes.
Why?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you ever see the Menendez family again after that?
No.
You said that Mr. Menendez, during the time that you had gone to the hamburger restaurant, had taken some interest in you and talked to you about school. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you call the house after this incident and ask to talk to Mr. Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And who answered the phone?
Kitty answered the phone. This was in August of 1989. I wanted to go to a concert that the band The Who was putting on. And Jose had made mention to me that anytime I was ready to get into the business, the music industry, which is what I'd like to do, or if I ever wanted anything, to give him a call. And I thought I would take advantage of that because I wanted to get some good tickets. And I called, and Kitty answered, and I asked to speak with Jose. And she very rudely told me that he had just come back from a business trip and he was not available to talk to me. And I asked if I could leave a message, and she said that I couldn't. Try calling another time. She hung up.
Did you identify yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I said, this is Tracy. Do you remember me? Nervously, of course, after my last experience with her.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any examination on behalf of Erik Menendez?
Just briefly on.
I'm not doing anything. Just wait. Ms. Baker, on the evening that you were at the house where you heard Jose Menendez screaming about threatening to kill someone, you remember that evening?
Yes.
You said that Mr. Menendez then ordered the boys upstairs.
That's right.
And you said you saw Lyle 20 to 30 minutes later.
Yes.
Did you ever see Erik again that night?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Yes. Ms. Baker, in reference to the questions that you were just asked, where were you physically located when you saw Lyle again that night, the night that you heard his father make these threats?
I was in the guest house.
Okay, and it was your understanding that that was where Lyle was staying during that period of time, is that correct?
Yes.
And his brother, Erik Menendez, was not staying in the guest house, correct?
That's correct.
Is that one of the occasions during which you spent the night at the Menendez home?
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that you were dating Lyle Menendez in October and November of 1988?
Yes.
And approximately how many dates would you say you had with him?
Maybe 10, a round figure.
And included in these 10 dates, would the Thanksgiving dinner be one of them?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe between 10 and 15. That would probably be one, yeah.
And I believe you indicated you had 2 to 3 family dinners and there were 3 or 4 other occasions when you had spent time with the Menendez family, which were not categorized as dinners. Do you recall your testimony?
Yes.
Would those have been dates as well?
No, mostly it was while they were playing tennis. I went several times to watch them play tennis where their parents also came along.
And when you'd go to watch them play tennis, would that be on the tennis court on their own property, or would that be at other locations?
Other locations.
Now, I believe you've indicated that you were in the guest house and you heard some noise, which caused, I'm referring to the incident where the young man was either getting in or getting out of the car, and Mr. Menendez said some things. And I believe you indicated you were in the guest house at the time that you first heard some noise. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where in the guest house were you?
On the patio.
You were outdoors?
Yeah, there's a upstairs patio.
So balcony?
Yeah, a balcony. Yeah, sorry.
And so you were out of doors at that time. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, there's an overhang. I guess I was outside. I was still within the confines of the house, but I sort of am nosy and I was standing on the patio trying to see what I could see.
Now, when you said you were trying to see what you could see, was this after your attention had been drawn to some noise?
No.
Okay, so you were out on the balcony and you heard some noise. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you went to, and Lyle Menendez left your presence, and then shortly thereafter you went to see what was going on.
Lyle had left my presence prior to me going to the balcony, and I was curious because he left in such a hurry. I wanted to know what was happening. So I sort of was hanging out by the balcony, and at that point I heard loud shouting and I heard car door slamming, and this is when I went to the main house.
About how long after Lyle Menendez had left your presence was it that you heard the loud noises in the car door?
2 or 3 minutes, probably.
Okay. And then you left the guest house and you went out front to the where the cars are parked in front of the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell from where the noise was coming from when you were standing on the balcony of the guest house?
Generally, yes, but I knew it wasn't coming from inside the house. I could sort of tell it was out front, yeah.
All right. And so then you went out and you saw Mr. Menendez. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you've indicated that in addition to yourself, Mr. Menendez, the young man in the car, Lyle Menendez, and Erik Menendez, there was also a young man there named Ed Fenno. Is that correct?
Yes.
And potentially another friend of Lyle Menendez's named Cole.
Yes, I don't remember if he was there. It's in my mind, I remember his being around at that time, but I can't be sure of that evening.
Okay, by around at that time, Cole Kruger, is this Cole Kruger?
I don't know his last name. I just know his name is Cole. He's from Norway or something.
Okay. And it was your recollection then that he was around the Menendez home or around when you were dating Lyle Menendez, or in what regards?
I think around at that, right before Thanksgiving time, I believe he was there for a visit. He wasn't an omnipresent person. He wasn't there constantly. He just was, I think, on a visit.
And he was staying at the home?
You know what? I don't think so. I don't remember.
Now, Ed Fenno was another friend of Lyle Menendez's. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And at that time, he was actually living in the Menendez home. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And on the occasions when you spent the night there, Ed Fenno was also spending the night there as well. Is that correct?
I think sometimes Ed would spend the night away from home, but most of the time he was there in the main house.
All right. So there were a number of people out in the area in front of the house when Mr. Menendez made this statement. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that he made the statement, did he have any kind of firearms? There was a handgun or a rifle or anything like that in his hands?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did he have any kind of weapon at all that you saw in his hands at the time that he said that he would kill this young man?
No, I didn't have a clear view of him. His back was to me, but not that I'm aware of.
All right. When this incident was over and the young man in the car had left, did you continue to see Mr. Menendez?
Yes, he came toward us. And like I said, I don't remember if he specifically told me to go back inside or whether I just did it. That was the last time I saw him.
Okay. And when he came towards you, was he holding any weapons?
No.
Did he strike the young man in the car? Did you see him hit him?
No, I didn't. I mentioned that I had come at the tail end.
All right, but the part that you saw, he didn't hit him, correct?
No, he was too far away. The guy was getting in or out of a car and on the street, and Jose was still within the confines of the driveway.
Okay, so the young man in the car was actually on the street, correct?
I think the car was sort of in, if you've ever seen the front of their home, there's a driveway, sort of like this, and there's another driveway that sticks out and goes to the street, kind of. I think the car was there.
So it was in the driveway, but not all the way into the area in front of the house?
Making a quick exit kind of thing.
And so did you actually see Mr. Menendez when he made the statement, don't ever come back or I'll kill you or something like that?
I saw the back of his head. He was yelling, and I had just arrived on the scene.
All right. And when you arrived on the scene, all these other people were already there, with the exception of Cole, who may or may not have been
Right, yes.
Okay. May I have a moment, please? Now, I believe you've indicated that Thanksgiving was the last time that you were at the Menendez home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that if you had 2 or 3 dinners with the family and had seen them 3 or 4 other times, those 3 or 4 other times would have been the tennis matches that you've told us about just now?
Yes.
Okay. Before Thanksgiving dinner, how did Mrs. Menendez treat you?
She really didn't ever talk to me. At one tennis match, the first one I went, she sat huddled next to her husband on the other side of me and never even gave regard to me. I just assumed that.
Okay, well, I'm not asking what you assumed. I'm asking you how she treated you.
She didn't acknowledge me.
So you had no interaction with her, basically.
At that time, no.
Now, the dinner that you went to that ended up at the Hamburger Hamlet, I take it then this was before the Thanksgiving dinner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Now, I believe you indicated that after Thanksgiving dinner, you were waiting for Lyle Menendez to drive someone else home, and you were staying at the Menendez house during that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Had you spent the night at the Menendez home during that Thanksgiving vacation, prior to Thanksgiving dinner?
I think so. I would generally stay on a weekend. So if Thanksgiving that year fell on a weekend, I think I probably did because I'd lived far.
And were you going to school at the time?
Yes.
Now, when you had this conversation with Mrs. Menendez, I believe you indicated that before she grabbed your shoulders and caused you to sit back down, you had indicated to her that you had been having sexual relations with her son, Lyle Menendez, correct?
Yes.
And did she ask you if you had done this at her home?
She didn't specifically ask me. She told me that I had.
And did you disagree with her?
No.
Was it in fact true that you had had sexual relations with Lyle Menendez in his family's home?
Not in the main house.
Well, the guest house?
Yeah.
Okay, that was part of the family home, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you had no reason to believe that Lyle Menendez owned that guest house independently of his parents, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you think it was unreasonable for Mrs. Menendez to be upset that someone was having sex in her home?
I think that in this day and age, a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, it may be a disappointment to her, but I don't think that it's so outrageous in this day that a person needs to be verbally assaulted the way she did to me. I don't think it's that unusual. I think that most of us in this room would probably say that that's not unusual.
But you didn't ask her permission before you spent the night with her son in the guest house and had sexual relations with, did you?
Of course not.
All right. And then, so she asked you and you told her that you'd been having sex in her home, in her family's guest house, and she got upset, right?
She didn't specifically ask me in her guest house. She said, "Are you having a sexual relationship with my son?" Something to that effect. And again, I'm not in the habit of making lies up to people's parents that I potentially want to get to know better. And I didn't say, "Yes, I'm having sex in your house, ma'am." I didn't say that.
But she did ask you if you'd spent the night there, correct?
Yes, but I've spent the night there on many occasions, not many, but on several occasions, and didn't have any sexual encounters at all. I would stay in the maid's room and sleep and get up. And
then on other occasions, you did have sexual encounters with Lyle Menendez in his parents' home, correct?
Your Honor, ask an answer.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated that the way she treated you was very upsetting to you. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Did she hit you? Aside from touching you on the shoulders and forcing you back down, did she hit you?
She didn't literally smack, but hit me, but physically very, very hard pushed me back down into the couch. And that I would constitute as definitely physical assault. That's not normal activity.
Did you receive any injuries as a result of this?
No.
Okay. And I believe you indicated that this was very upsetting to you, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And approximately in August of '89, you called the house back to get tickets to the Who concert?
Well, you make it sound very trivial. I had established a pretty decent, not relationship, but rapport with Mr. Menendez. And I didn't know if she would answer the phone. They had a maid. I didn't know who would answer. And I don't think it's that unusual to ask for someone. I wasn't asking her for the tickets.
Ms. Baker, where was the maid when you spent the night in the maid's room?
I believe she had certain weekends off. The 2 times that I spent the night in the maid's room, 2 or 3, she wasn't obviously there. And I think at the time, maybe they didn't have a maid. They had either let her go or something happened, because I remember specifically that I thought it was very weird that Mrs. Menendez was serving the dinner, because she appeared to me to be sort of, a rich lady. She wouldn't be serving dinner to her family. She appeared to like probably to be served. And
But as a matter of fact, she did serve you dinner on more than one occasion, didn't she?
actually, Thanksgiving we had sort of a buffet style.
Now, in August of '89, do you remember what part of August it was that you called to get tickets to the Who concert?
It was real early in the month. I think the concert was the third week of August, and I wanted to make sure I had ample time to ask him.
So in spite of the fact that you'd suffered this trauma at the hands of Mrs. Menendez, you did call the Menendez home to get tickets to a concert. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask the answer to one thing.
Objection sustained.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused. Your next witness.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
My name is Marta Menendez Cano, C-A-N-O.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cano, I want to direct your attention to a meeting that you had with Lyle and Erik Menendez on the Wednesday or Thursday following your brother's death. Do you know which meeting I'm referring to?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the juries whether or not the meeting took place on Wednesday or Thursday, or whether you're sure about that?
I'm not sure which of the two nights, but I know it was one of those two evenings.
And can you tell us what the purpose of the meeting was?
Yes. The purpose of the meeting was to explain to them my findings at their father's office of the financial issues of their father.
And before the meeting, had you been to Jose Menendez's office?
That is correct.
And why had you been to the office?
Because I felt that someone in the family had to take care of Jose's pending business, and I called Marcy, his secretary, and asked her to come and get me, that I wanted to go and put a financial statement together for Jose.
And did you in fact do that?
Yes, I did.
And did you go to his office on more than one occasion?
Yes, I did.
And when you got done at the office, did you have certain documents that you took with you?
No, I did not have anything. I asked Marcy to help me in finding all Jose's personal files, so I could gather together some information and have an idea of what Jose had pending that I might be of help.
And when, if ever, did you first tell Lyle or Erik Menendez that this meeting was going to take place?
I told them, I believe it's same Tuesday, I told them that I needed to talk to them. I did not specify why, and they sort of evaded me, and then I did the same thing again on Wednesday. I only saw them in the evening, early evening time after I left the office.
And was there a meeting beyond the meeting you're discussing that you were preparing for?
Yes, that's correct.
And was that a meeting, well, who was that a meeting with?
That meeting was on Friday after the memorial services, right at Live Entertainment with the chairman of the board.
And who is that person?
That's Peter Hoffman.
And why did you plan to meet with Peter Hoffman on Friday after the memorial service?
Because of my findings at the office of my brother, I realized that there were some benefits of my brother that I thought that they could be negotiated. And I wanted, because of the situation where the boys were left and all the speculations that were being done at the time, that it could have been related to the business, I thought that I could get Peter to subsidize some of the losses of the benefits that my brother had based on the children and help them out that way.
And so did you arrange for this meeting on Friday with Peter Hoffman?
No, I arranged it on Thursday.
And did Lyle or Erik have anything to do with arranging that meeting with Peter Hoffman?
Not at all.
Did they know that such a meeting was planned to take place?
No, they did not.
Objection sustained. The answer stricken.
Did you inform either Erik or Lyle prior to telling them that you wanted to meet with them, that you had planned a meeting with Peter Hoffman?
No, I did not.
And when you contacted Lyle or Erik Menendez concerning the meeting you wanted to have with them, did you have a telephone conversation with them about the purpose of the
No, we were all the family. When they came together, we were all the family together. So I just approached them and said, boys, I need to talk to you. It's very serious, and I need to get together with you privately. And they just evaded me all the time, and they were not interested in getting alone with me in any kind of conversation. So I had a hard time setting up that meeting.
And how is it that you finally did conduct a meeting with him?
Well, I insisted finally that it was very important that I had a meeting that I wanted to do with Peter Hoffman, and that it was very important that they knew what the meeting was going to be all about, so it wouldn't go over their head, and I wanted them to be present as well.
And when you went to this meeting, where did the meeting take place?
I'm sorry, which meeting?
Where did the meeting take place with Erik and Lyle?
In their room at the Bel Air Hotel.
And was there anyone else present besides
No, there
yourself,
was not.
Erik and Lyle Menendez?
No, everybody was getting to get ready to go for dinner. We were gathering all together at the dining place normally for dinner.
And did you take any documents with you to the meeting?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the juries what documents you took with you?
Well, I did a rough financial statement of assets and liabilities of Jose, and I review all the insurance things, and I review all the benefits that were inside his contract, and basically put all that together to come up with some assets, the assets he owned and the assets that were speculated that he should own or whatever, put them all together to have a rough idea of what Jose was worth, so I could inform the boys. And at the same time, I also put some other information that I was going to present to Peter Hoffman.
And prior to attending the meeting with Erik and Lyle, did you have knowledge of a life insurance policy that you in fact wrote for your brother?
Yes, I did.
And did you have that life insurance policy with you when you went to the meeting with Lyle and Erik on Wednesday or Thursday evening?
No, I did not. I called my office, and because I couldn't find it in Jose's files, and since I had a copy of it on the file, I faxed it directly to Sun Life when I did the claim for the boys.
Right. Do you know when you submitted the claim to Sun Life?
Yes, I did. Wednesday.
And did either
Wednesday
Erik,
morning. Wednesday morning I did.
did either Erik or Lyle Menendez have any contact with you in reference to submitting that claim?
No, not at all.
Was that something you did on your own?
That is correct.
And were you aware of the policy because you in fact were the person?
That's right. I'm the agent. Anyway, agents are the ones who do that normally, so I did not need to inform them about it. I knew it had to be done.
Could I put you witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you, Ms. Conlon, what's been marked as Exhibit 140. Do you recognize that document as the insurance policy that you wrote for your brother?
Yes.
And was that policy written in 1987?
1986, I believe. I think it was September 1986. It says issue date January 87, but I wrote it in September 86.
And physically, that policy was located where after the death?
Well, the application copy was in my files in Florida, in West Palm Beach, Florida. This actual policy, I don't know where it came from. I would imagine it came from Sun Life, or we never found it.
And showing you what has been marked previously as Exhibit number 181. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
Just tell the juries what that document is, please.
This is a document that I roughly prepared of Jose's assets to show the boys and to myself find out what Jose owned, etc.
And Exhibit number 182.
This is a financial statement that I found on Jose's files, which I used to lead me sort of where to find or what to look for when I did my own financial statement.
Did you find 182 prior to the meeting with Lyle and Erik Menendez?
I'm sorry?
Did you find that document prior to your meeting with Lyle?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I asked Marcy about this, and she told me not to believe it too much because she knew that Jose had inflated it. Okay.
Objection sustained. Everything after yes is stricken as non-responsive. Your next question, please.
Thank you. And Exhibit number 183. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I did this to show Peter Hoffman how many liabilities of taxes the boys would be having, and in order to help me in my negotiation.
And is that a document that you had with you when you met with Lyle and Erik on Wednesday or Thursday?
I am not sure if I had this one or if I did it. That's why I'm not sure if I saw them Wednesday or Thursday. I know I did this one on Thursday before the meeting, but I'm not sure if I had that one.
And 184?
Yes, I did this exactly to discuss with the boys. These are the different issues that I wanted to talk to them about.
And that's a piece of paper that says on the top, issues to discuss.
That is correct.
And along the side, there are various issues.
That is correct.
And 185, do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is another document that I found on Jose's personal financial file. And there's a letter, and then on the it's just another financial statement that he had prepared for a bank.
Now, prior to attending this meeting on Wednesday or Thursday, were you also aware of a will that your brother and his wife had executed back in 1981?
Yes, I was. I was a witness on that will.
And did you have that will with you when you went to this meeting on Wednesday or Thursday?
No, I did not.
But you were aware of it?
I was aware of what the will had, definitely.
And on exhibit number 184, your one-page sheet, which says issues to discuss, one of the issues you have on here to discuss is the estate.
That is correct.
Did you in fact discuss that issue with Lyle and Erik Menendez when you had this meeting?
Very briefly, because they really did not want to listen to what I had to say. I was able to jot a couple of things to them. They just discarded the whole issue, and they told me they were not the beneficiaries of that they were out of the will.
And do you recall what topic you discussed first in this meeting with them?
I don't recall exactly what's the topic that I discussed first. The first thing I told them is that I had been at their father's office and that I had been putting together their assets and liabilities, and immediately Lyle interrupted me and said, "Aunt Marta, we're not in the will." And I said, "What do you mean you're not in the will? Of course you're in the will." He says, No. Then Erik said, "No, Aunt Marta, our dad took us out of the will over a year ago." And I said, "No, you're not. I remember, and you are in the will. I was a witness, and I know you are the beneficiaries of this money." So that was the beginning of the whole discussion back and forth of them trying to convince me that they had nothing to do with this. And I told them, well, whatever it is that you think you are or not, I do know that you are the beneficiary of the life insurance because I wrote that and I would know if you were changed.
Let me break this down a little bit. Did you mention your estimate of the value of the estate?
Yes, I did.
And did either Lyle or Erik react in any way to your statement of what the value of the estate was?
Yes, they did.
And who reacted? And
Erik was the first one to say, "I can't believe my father had so much money."
And what, if anything, did Lyle say in response to that?
Lyle just looked at me like not believing what I was saying. He was really pretty distrustful at the time.
And did you also discuss the life insurance policy that you had written for your brother, the Sun Life life insurance policy?
I began to tell them about the life insurance, and they again interrupt me. I believe it was Erik, and said, "Aunt Marta, that insurance was never done. My father never took the physical."
And did you know what he was referring to when he said his father had never taken the physical?
Well, I figured that it was because I had already had a conversation at Live in reference to the $5 million policy, and I explained to him that I wasn't talking about life contractual benefit insurance. I was talking about another life insurance that I had written for their father, and I knew they were the beneficiaries.
So you started talking about the Sun Life policy, correct?
That is correct.
And at the time you were talking about the Sun Life policy, there was also, to your knowledge, another insurance policy on your brother?
There was supposed to be, based on his contract, a $5 million policy, which apparently Jose never took the medical, therefore was never done.
And when Erik Menendez said that his father had not taken the physical, did you know or believe what life insurance policy he was referring to?
Yes, I knew he was referring to the $5 million policy because Marcy and everyone at the office had already told me that, and we had had some kind of discrepancy on that.
And from anything that either Lyle or Erik said, were they aware, to your knowledge, of the existence of this Sun Life policy that you had written back in 86 or 87?
No, they had no.
Calls for speculation on the part of the witness.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Can you tell me what, if anything else, you said about the Sun Life insurance policy other than what you've already indicated?
I explained to them what I was talking about. I explained to them that there was a life insurance policy that I had originally written for their father many years ago, and I had converted to a higher policy back at the end of 1986, and that I knew they were the contingent beneficiaries on that policy.
And did they respond that they knew it as well?
they asked me what policy was I talking about, how much was this policy for? And they said, are you sure we are the beneficiary? And Marta, my father took us out of the will. And I said, not on this one because I would know. I definitely would know on this one because I'm the agent.
And did you also have further discussion about the $5 million policy that had been issued by the company or supposedly was going to be issued by the company?
At that point, I started talking to them what I was going to present to Peter Hoffman. And among them, I was going to make a claim to replace the $5 million policy, which was never done, but that I felt that the company had an obligation to them on a figure like that, whether it was in other kinds of benefits or what have you. But I did feel that the company was liable on not having pursued that Jose did take this policy from his contract. That was part of his contractual employment.
And what, if anything, did Lyle or Erik Menendez say in response to that suggestion?
They continued telling me that they were not on the will, that they were not the beneficiary. So they really weren't, they were sort of discarding me. They were not interested in what I was talking about.
I have one moment, Your Honor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any examination on behalf of Erik Menendez?
No, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, please. May I have the exhibit?
Yes.
Actually, may we take our recess right now so I can look at these exhibits?
How long is your examination?
It'll be about 10 minutes. Can we just have a brief recess, like a 5-minute recess?
Let me see counsel here so we have some idea of the schedule first. I've been trying to get some more information regarding the scheduling in relationship to whether we'll need and when we'll need both juries here. And we have a little more examination of this witness before both juries and one other witness who will testify short testimony before both juries, and then we'll excuse the gold jury for the balance of the day. And what I'm going to probably do, and I'll talk further with the lawyers, is have you come back tomorrow afternoon, and I'll give you more information about that when we come back. The blue jury would be here the balance of today and tomorrow morning as well, but the gold jury might not have to be here until tomorrow afternoon. But let me take the recess now, give the lawyers a chance to work a little bit on their preparation here, and we'll resume at 10 minutes after the hour. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. We'll resume at 10 minutes after the hour.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Resume with the examination of the witness, cross-examination.
Thank you. Mrs. Cano, I believe you testified in direct examination that you believe that the meeting that you had with your two nephews occurred on either Wednesday or Thursday of the week after your brother and sister-in-law were killed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you remember testifying at a previous hearing that it was your best recollection that it was on Thursday that the meeting occurred?
I testified to both. I testified that I wasn't sure if it was Wednesday or Thursday. And when I was pressed to try to pinpoint one, I said, well, maybe it was Thursday, but I'm not sure which of the two nights it was.
Directing court and counsel to volume 74, the testimony on August 23rd of this year, page 12,450. Line, do you have it? Okay, line 20, question. And your best recollection of when you had the meeting with the defendants was on Thursday night, is that correct? Answer, I believe so.
If you check the previous several questions, you will see what I'm referring to.
Okay, so you have in fact reviewed this transcript before testifying today, is that correct?
I sure have.
All right. You understand that the day on which you had the meeting with the defendants may make a difference, is that correct?
I don't think it makes a difference. I don't see why it would make a difference either Wednesday or Thursday.
Do you know that on Thursday afternoon that your nephews bought 3 Rolex watches at the Century City Shopping Mall?
I wasn't aware it was Thursday, but it still wouldn't make a difference if I met with them Wednesday or Thursday. I don't see why you would refer to the difference. They didn't buy it with the estate money. They bought it with a card.
With a credit card?
Yes. But not from the estate.
So although you testified on August the 23rd that your best recollection was that it was Thursday, it's now your testimony, and sometimes your testimony before, that it was Wednesday or Thursday that you had the meeting with the defendants. Is that correct?
I think it's the same thing I said before. If it was Thursday evening, it could have been Thursday evening. It could have also been Wednesday evening. If I'm going to be really honest, I have to say that I'm not sure either one. If you ask me which of the two you pinpoint me, maybe it was Thursday, but I really don't know.
May I approach, please, Your Honor?
What?
May I approach, please, with exhibits 130, 183, and 184?
Yes.
I believe you testified on direct examination today that exhibit 183, which is a list of assets, liabilities, taxes due, and then net and monthly payments, is a document which you prepared on Thursday, following the death of your brother and sister.
Could be Thursday. I do believe, my recollection, this is the last one I did, so I probably did it Thursday morning.
All right, and I believe that in prior testimony you gave that you visited your brother's office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in order to get an accurate picture of his financial situation.
That is correct.
I believe your testimony is that exhibit 184, which is an exhibit entitled Issues to Discuss, it was a list of things that you prepared. And for what purpose did you prepare exhibit 184?
That it was specifically for the boys. That was for Erik and Lyle. These are the situations that I wanted to talk to Erik and Lyle about.
Okay, so the issues to discuss were not for any meetings with people at live entertainment, but rather was for the purpose of your discussion with your nephews.
No, it's for both. I mean, I prepared for them, but of course the information there I was going to use as well in my meeting with Peter Hoffman. This is what I wanted them to be aware of before the meeting, but of course these are issues that I was going to talk about in the meeting.
And is it your recollection that you had exhibit 184 with you at the time that you met with the defendants to discuss their financial situation?
That one, yes, I did.
Now, I believe you indicated that they, meaning the defendants, were not anxious to meet with you or didn't want to discuss finances or something to that effect. Do you recall your testimony earlier?
Yes, it had nothing to do with finances because they didn't know that that's what I was going to do. They just didn't want to meet with anyone of the family privately. I got that feeling anyway.
Okay. And would it be your testimony then that you only had one meeting with the defendants before the memorial service in Los Angeles dealing with the issue of assets and liabilities and those kinds of things?
That is correct.
And that meeting now, to your best recollection, was either Wednesday or Thursday night?
That is correct.
Okay. And you had exhibit 184 with you in preparation for the meeting with your nephews, correct?
This is 184, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, I believe you indicated on Friday after the memorial service that you had a meeting with executives from Live Entertainment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that meeting occurred at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
That is correct.
Aside from being at your brother's office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to check into his assets and liabilities, had you had any other meetings with any of the executives at Live Entertainment before the meeting you had at 1 o'clock on Friday, the 25th of August?
I did. Well, they came in. I was at my brother's office and they would come in and say something to me constantly, different people. So I don't know if you call that meetings, but I do remember meeting, and I don't recall if it was the day before or the same day, but I do remember meeting with David, with the two Davids before meeting with Peter Hoffman. I don't know if we were waiting for Peter or if it was the day before. I can't recall that, but I do know I met with them for a few minutes before.
Now, by the two Davids, do you mean David Campbell and David Mishra?
That is correct.
And it's your best recollection at this time that you met with the two Davids either the Thursday or the Friday of that week?
That's what I recall. I know I met with them, but I think it was one of those 2 days. I can't exactly tell you, but I think that's my best recollection is one of those 2 days.
Now, the meeting on Friday with Peter Hoffman, was Roger Smith at that meeting?
I don't think so.
Were the defendants at that meeting on Friday after the memorial service?
Yes, they were.
Okay, and had you had any other meetings with your nephews at Live Entertainment or discussions with Live Entertainment executives with your two nephews prior to the 1 o'clock meeting on Friday, the 25th of August?
No. I know that we were together waiting for Peter to come in, and maybe that's what you're talking about. The only people that were present in the meeting were Carlos Baralt, Peter Hoffman, David, not David, Dave, if you tell me the two last names, I tell you which one.
Campbell or Miss
Campbell, David Campbell, and the two boys and I. That's what I recall.
And that is the meeting on Friday at 1 o'clock on August the 25th.
That is correct. That was during the reception. The reception was happening at live.
During that meeting, was there any discussion about the $5 million life insurance policy that was part of your brother's compensation package?
Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to object this beyond the scope and calling for hearsay.
Well, the question itself does not call for the substance of the conversation, just whether such a conversation occurred.
But this whole
And-
inquiry is beyond the scope.
Objection overruled on that ground, since the subject has been raised.
I don't recall, but it's part of what I wanted to discuss about, but I'm not sure that we talked specifically of that.
I believe you indicated that you received information that your brother had not taken the physical, which was necessary to put in force the $5 million policy.
That is correct.
Where did you receive that information from?
Different sources. It was told to me by the controller. It was told to me by Marcy. And of course, afterwards, it was confirmed by the boys.
Before you spoke to your nephews about this fact,
Yes.
had you had any prior discussions with them about whether or not your brother had taken the physical? In other words, you had a meeting with your nephews on Wednesday or Thursday night at which this subject was broached, the $5 million in the physical, correct?
That's correct.
Had you had any prior discussions with your nephews before this meeting?
With my nephews? No.
About the physical for the $5 million policy?
No, not with my nephews.
Okay, so the first time that you became aware that they had knowledge about the $5 million policy and the physical was during this meeting you had with them in preparation for the meeting you had on Friday, August the 25th.
That is correct.
Now, I believe you indicated that during this meeting with your nephews, you had a state of mind that your brother had written a will which had left his estate to his sons in the event that his wife predeceased him or died at the same time, correct?
Yes, that was a will done in the past.
And at the time that you had this discussion on Wednesday or Thursday of that week, had you seen a copy of the will since the death of your brother and sister-in-law?
No, I had not. I did have one in my files at home, at my office in Florida, but I had not looked at it.
Now, when you came into town, I believe you came to Los Angeles on Monday, the 21st of August. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when you came into town, did you bring a copy of the will with you?
No, I did not.
I believe it's your testimony that the following day, which was Tuesday, the 22nd of August, you began your search at your brother's office to look for his assets and liabilities.
That is correct.
Were you asked?
Mid-morning, Tuesday.
Were you asked by anyone to do that?
No, as I stated before, there was a call coming in. Carlos and all the men had left looking for the safe deposit to see if they could find the will, what have you. And I was with my sister Terry. Terry answered the phone, and it was a call from the brokerage firm. And when that margin call came about, that's when I realized that what am I doing here sitting and crying? I have to go and try to put things together for Jose because there might be some issues that need to be resolved. I did it on my own. I just called Marcy and told her to come and pick me up.
And that was Marcy Eisenberg, your
That is correct.
brother's secretary at
Yes.
the time of his death, correct? And did she in fact come and get you on that Tuesday and take you to live entertainment?
Yes, she came on a limo to pick me up.
Did she come and pick you up on any of the other days to take you to live entertainment to continue your search?
Yes, she did. She picked me up every single morning.
I believe you indicated that you told the defendants what your estimate was of the estate of your dead brother. Do you remember your testimony?
Yes.
And what figure did you quote them?
Well, I quote them on a gross basis around 14 million.
And you say that they expressed a surprise at that amount. Is that correct?
Honestly, not only surprised, they were not even interested in what I was talking about. They said, Marta, we're not in the will. They just did not. The only surprise that I heard is when Erik said, I can't believe my father had so much money.
Had you ever stayed at your brother's home in Beverly Hills prior to his death?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how much he paid for that home?
I know now. I didn't know at the time.
Do you know how much he paid for that home?
I think it's approximately around $5 million.
Now, during the week that you were, the 4 or 5 days that you were in Los Angeles before the memorial service, did you ever go to your brother and sister-in-law's home for the purpose of searching for any assets or liabilities in the home?
No, I did not.
Did you ever go to the home at all during that period of
No,
time?
I did not.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Was the $14 million figure that you mentioned an accurate figure, to your knowledge?
It was inaccurate, yes.
Accurate or
Inaccurate.
inaccurate?
That's correct.
And did you also mention a net figure as
Yes,
well?
I did.
And do you know what that figure was?
I
You're
think
talking
it-
about the conversation with the two defendants?
Yes, Your Honor. In this conversation with the two
Yes.
defendants.
The
did
net
you-
figure was around 7 or 8 million. I can't recall right now which one of the two, but
And
it's,
those were your computations?
that was
8
my
million.
computation based on all the gatherings that I did at his office.
And was that also accurate or inaccurate?
It was inaccurate.
Both those figures were
That
inaccurate.
is correct.
And they expressed surprise as to both those figures?
Yes.
You were asked whether you stated in prior testimony, in answer to the question, your best recollection of when you had the meeting with the defendants was on Thursday, and your answer, I believe so. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Do you also remember being asked this question? Do you remember when that discussion was? And this is at page 12422, line 15. Do you remember being asked this question? Do you remember when that discussion was? And your answer, that it was either Wednesday night or Thursday night. I don't recall which of the two nights, but I'm definitely sure that it was before Friday, which was the memorial.
That is correct.
And is that still your testimony?
That is correct.
The $5 million figure for the house, did you determine how much was owed on the mortgage for that house?
I think he had a very large mortgage, but I think it was 2.5 million in mortgage.
And was the
That's
house
my recollection.
was the house sold, to your knowledge?
The house was sold.
Do you know what it was sold for?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
I'm not sure. I think it was sold around 3.5, 4 million, something on those numbers.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
It's Armando, Armando, Lopez, Lopez.
Mr. Lopez, what is your occupation, sir?
I'm a private investigator.
And are you appointed by the court to be a private investigator on this case on behalf of the defendants, Erik and Lyle Menendez?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you tell the jury what your background is in investigations and law enforcement?
I was a police officer for the city of Santa Monica for approximately 17 years, 3 of which were patrol, and the remainder were in the detective bureau as an investigator.
And in the course of your employment as a Santa Monica police officer, did you become familiar with firearms?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Now, do you see the 2 photographs that are up on the board?
Yes.
And do you see the other series of photographs in front of you, all of which comprise exhibits 281 through 290?
Yes.
And did you take those photographs, Mr. Lopez?
Yes, I did.
Where did you take them?
In the city of Santa Monica at the Big 5 store on Wilshire Boulevard.
And when did you take them?
I took those, I believe it was October 4th.
Of 1993?
Yes.
And how did you come to take those photographs? Were you instructed to do so?
Yes, I was.
And who told you to do that?
I believe it was Miss Lansing.
And had you gone to the Big 5 store in Santa Monica before October 4th, 1993?
Yes, I did.
And on what date did you go there?
I believe it was the 1st. It was a Friday, October 1st.
Did you make certain observations on that Friday, October 1st, when you were at that location?
Yes, I did.
And did you report those observations to Miss Lansing?
Yes, I did.
And was it then that you were instructed to go back and take photographs?
Yes.
Now, calling your attention to the photographs that are in front of you and the photographs on the board, what do those photographs basically depict?
The photographs on the board, the one on the left depicts a glass cabinet with what appear to be firearms laying on the top shelf.
Now, when you entered this store on October 1st, the Friday, did you at some point observe that glass cabinet?
Yes, I did.
And at the point when you first observed it, did you notice that it had what appeared to be firearms in it?
Yes.
And could you tell at that point whether they were real firearms or pellet guns?
When I first saw them, they appeared to be real.
Okay. And as you got closer to the cabinet, at some point, did they still appear to be real?
As I approached the cabinet and looked at them closely, I realized they were not real.
Okay. And was that based on your prior experience, or was there a label on them that said pellet gun, not real, anything like that?
It was based on my experience.
This cabinet, did you make any observations about the condition of the glass cabinet with respect to its potential age?
Objection, lack of foundation, lack of expertise.
Rephrase the question.
Okay, did you make any observations about the condition of the cabinet?
Yes, I did.
And what did you observe about its condition?
I observed that the cabinet was made of glass and the top of the cabinet had several scratches on the top.
Did they appear to be fresh scratches?
Some appear to be fresh. The remainder appear to be very old scratches.
Now, did you contact any persons who worked in that particular Big Five store prior to August of 1989?
I'm sorry.
Did you make contact with any person or persons who worked in that particular Big Five store prior to August of 1989?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to ascertain whether firearms similar to the ones that are depicted in that photograph were carried in the stores prior to August 1989?
Yes.
And were they?
Yes.
Were you personally, from your experience in law enforcement, familiar with any of the firearms depicted in that cabinet as having been something manufactured prior to August of 1989?
When you refer to firearms, what are you referring to?
These pellet guns, Your Honor.
Yes.
It turned out that all the guns in that cabinet were pellet guns, correct?
That's correct.
And did you determine strike that, did you recognize any of those guns as guns that you were familiar with prior to August of 1989?
Yes.
In your experience in law enforcement, had you come across pellet guns that resembled real handguns?
Yes.
Now, did you make an effort to ascertain whether there were other sporting goods stores in the general West LA, Santa Monica area that sold either pellet guns in the shape of handguns or real handguns in August of 1989?
Objection irrelevant.
What roll? You can answer the question.
Yes.
And did you receive information that certain establishments that were in existence in August of 1989 are no longer in existence?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any examination on behalf of Lyle Menendez?
No, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Mr. Lopez, how long have you been employed as an investigator in the Menendez case?
Approximately 6 months, I believe.
6 months as of today's date?
I'm not sure the exact date.
During the period of time that you were at the Big Five, this is on Wilshire Boulevard, correct?
The Big Five on Wilshire?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's where you took the pictures that are on the board and in front of you?
Yes, it is.
And during the period of time that you were there, did you attempt to ascertain the identity of the person who waited on the defendants on August the 18th of 1989?
No.
Were you asked to do that?
No. I don't recall I was.
All right, so you don't recall if you were asked, but you definitely made no effort to find the identity of the person who waited on the defendants on August the 18th of 1989. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were asked to go there for the first time on October the 1st of this year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And prior to that, October the 1st, you had never visited this Big Five on Wilshire Boulevard in connection with the Menendez case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you went in and you took the photographs, which are displayed on the board and also in front of you, did you ask anyone if those were in fact the same display cases that they had in 1989?
Did I ask anybody?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you ask anyone if the display cases were set up identically to how they were set up in 1989?
Yes, I did.
Do you know for a fact that that cabinet was there in 1989?
No.
Now, when you went into the Big Five on October the 4th to take these photographs, did anyone at the Big Five tell you that there was a 14-day waiting period to buy pellet guns?
No.
And is it your understanding, having been a police officer for 17 years and also a private investigator for a period of time, that there is no waiting period in California to buy pellet guns? Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay, and there never has been a waiting period to buy pellet guns, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the condition of the cabinet as is displayed in the photograph on the board and the photographs in front of you, you have no personal knowledge that that is how the cabinet looked on August the 18th of 1989, is that correct?
It's a difficult question to answer because I did speak to somebody about the glass cabinet and how it looked prior to 1989.
But you have no personal knowledge of how the cabinet looked in 1989, is that correct?
That's correct.
You have no recollection of going into the Big Five in 1989 in August and looking at the cabinet and then making a comparison with the photographs you took last week, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I have nothing further.
Yes, Mr. Lopez, you did, however, verify with an employee of that Big Five that in his opinion, the cabinet's the same and looks the same.
Objection calls for hearsay.
Objection sustained.
Mrs. Basanich asked you if you had tried to determine if it was the same display and if it looked the same, correct?
That's correct.
And you did make those inquiries, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And there is a former employee who you have arranged to have come testify here as a witness, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. You can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, let me see counsel at the sidebar regarding the scheduling, please.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Okay, we've excused the gold jury, and now we'll resume with the blue jury. You folks have been so good. We wanted to keep you here and enjoy seeing all your smiling faces. So we'll continue. The defense may call its next witness.
Yes, he called me Connor, Your Honor.
All right, did you want to be excused? Okay. All right, we'll excuse Mr. Menendez and Witz. All right, stand behind the court reporter over here and then face the court clerk, please.
Did you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your stand and state your name for the record.
Andres Cano, ANDRESCANO.
Mr. Connor, you have to pull the mic so it's facing directly at you.
Okay.
And we fixed it so it doesn't matter how close you get. Okay. Are you usually referred to as Andy Cano?
Yes, I am.
Where were you born, Mr. Cano?
I was born in Livingston, New Jersey,
Where were you raised in your earliest childhood years?
Puerto Rico.
And who did you live in Puerto Rico with?
My mother and my father.
You're a little too far from the microphone. Okay. And your mother is who?
Marta Cano.
And was Jose Menendez your uncle?
Yes, he was.
You have
And
to speak up also.
Okay.
Your mic doesn't pick up your voice.
Okay.
takes a few minutes to get used to where
Yeah.
you should be. And are you therefore first cousin to Erik and Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I am.
At some point, did your family, you and your mother, your brother and sisters, move back to New Jersey?
Yes, we did.
And do you recall approximately how old you were when your family moved to New Jersey?
Well, I would have been 6 years old. It was in 79.
And at the time when you and your family moved to New Jersey, were your parents separated and or divorced?
Yes, they were. I believe they got divorced right after I moved there. I'm not sure.
Now, currently, Mr. Kano, what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a student, a full-time student.
And where do you go to school?
UCF, which is University of Central Florida in Orlando.
And have you been and are you still athletic?
Overall.
Yes, I am.
And what is your sport?
Soccer.
And do you play soccer? I take it you're on teams.
Yes, I am.
Do you also teach it and coach it?
Yes, I do.
Overall.
When you were 6 years old and your family moved to New Jersey, did you play soccer then?
I believe I started when I was 7 years old. I didn't play in Puerto Rico, no, but once I went to New Jersey, yes, I started.
And were you aware of whether or not your cousin Erik Menendez also played soccer?
Yes, he did.
Were you aware of other sports that your cousin Erik was involved in?
Well, later on, he became involved in tennis, but that's all I know.
Now, did you form a friendship with your cousin Erik Menendez?
Yes.
Approximately how old were you and how old was he when the two of you became friends?
Well, I was probably 7 years old when we really became friends, but I had met him previously.
Had you visited with your cousin Erik Menendez's family while you were still living in Puerto Rico?
Yes, I did.
Had you seen him and his parents and his brother at family gatherings over different times of the year while you were still living in Puerto Rico?
I don't remember if we came up or not.
Okay. Once you moved back to the mainland, did you see more of him?
Yes.
Now, would you, from time to time, ever stay over at Erik and Lyle's house?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall basically whether there was a pattern to this? I mean, what types of days, what days of the week would you stay over?
It was mostly on the weekends.
And do you know over what age, your age, would you stay over at Erik and Lyle's house?
Well, it varied between ages. I would say between my ages of 8 and 10 years old was the times that I most often was able to go over his house.
And after that, it was less frequent?
That's right.
When you were 10 years old, how old was Erik?
He was 12 and a half. That's right.
Now, were there occasions when your cousin Erik ever stayed at your house?
Very few times. I can only recall one.
Do you recall a time when your cousin Erik was playing at your house where in the course of your time together he told you something you had not heard before?
Yes, I do.
And can you first tell us where were you guys physically when this play began?
Okay, what I recall is this. Like I said before, this is one of the few times that he was able to come to my house for any activities. And this particular time, I remember it being winter time, and there were fields behind my house, agricultural fields. And it would be a field and then a strip of woods, and then there would be another field and another strip of woods and so on. And we were back in the fields.
Okay, and you were playing some kind of game in the fields behind your house?
That's right. We had toy guns and we were pretending like we were running from an army. We would play war games pretty often.
What was the name of this particular game? Do you remember?
Well, I just remember we were running from the Russians. I don't know if to call it that game or not, but
that's what you were pretending.
That's what we were pretending at the time.
And at some point while you were pretending to run from the Russians, did something happen that made the two of you take cover or hide?
Yes.
What happened?
Okay. There was a farmer that owned the fields, I guess, and I had heard stories from other neighborhood kids and so on that he was pretty mean to people that passed by the fields or would play in the fields. And that time there was a helicopter, and we thought that it was him. And
the helicopter, you mean, was flying?
It was flying over us, and it seemed very close to us. And we thought for sure that it was the farmer spotting people on the fields. And I was very scared, and I definitely told him about it, so we started running.
And where did you get to?
Well, we got to the woods, and then we decided that we were going to run. We were going to split up, and then we were going to run to a tree in another patch of woods, a couple fields afterwards that we both knew about, and we were going to run and meet at the tree.
Okay, and did you run and meet at the tree?
Yes, we did.
And did you spend some time at the tree hiding from the farmer?
Yes.
And during the time that you were at the tree hiding from the farmer, did Erik begin a conversation with you?
Yes.
And do you recall how the conversation began?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay, would you tell us how it began?
He asked me if my dad ever gave me massages.
And did you understand at that point what he meant?
No, I didn't.
And do you recall basically what your response to him was?
Well, at that point, I got the feeling, I'm sure he let me know this, but he was actually trying to find out if any of these massages were normal. And my response to him was that I wouldn't know. I didn't have a father around. My parents were divorced then. And I really couldn't help him.
Let me ask you this. He asked you whether your father gave you massages.
That's right.
Did you said he was trying to find out if it was normal. Was there something else he told you about the massages? Like where they were?
Yes, he did.
Okay. What did he say about where the massages were?
Well, he told me his father was massaging his dick.
He used that word?
Yes, he did.
And he was asking you some kind of question about this kind of behavior?
Seemed like he was reaching out to me.
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
See if we can reconstruct this, Mr. Conner. First, he asked you, does your dad give you massages? Something like that.
That's right.
And then do you ask him anything like what kind of massages? What do you mean by massages?
I'm sure I did.
And then he tells you that he's talking about his dad massages his dick or does something to his dick, is what he tells you.
That's right.
So then does he ask you again, does this happen to you? Anything like that?
Yes, he, at that point, we were both trying to figure out whether what was happening to him was normal. He
Okay.
wanted to know that if this happened to every kid with a father and son relationship, and I couldn't help him. I didn't have a father around.
So you said, I don't know, my dad's not here.
That's right.
Okay.
Said something to that effect.
Okay. And what else is said as best you can remember in the course of this particular conversation?
Well, what I do remember very specifically was him asking me to make a promise to him never to reveal that to anybody. And he was saying it very seriously, and I took it very seriously.
Had you suggested at any point in the conversation revealing it to someone or telling someone or asking someone about it?
Well, at that point, I was wondering myself, and I really wanted to ask my mother if that was normal.
Did you mention that to Eric?
Yes, I did.
And was it after that that he made you promise?
I don't remember it. It was probably after that, yes.
So you told him, I don't know if it's normal, why don't I ask my mom? Something like that?
Exactly.
And what did he say to you when you suggested asking your mother?
He told me never to reveal it to anybody, to promise him that I would keep it a secret between us.
Now, were there any other times that you were with your cousin Eric when this topic of massages with his father came up?
There were several times I recall.
And do you remember where these conversations came up?
Yes, I do. In his bedroom in the Pennington house.
And were on these occasions when you were visiting or sleeping over or something else?
Most likely sleeping over. I remember most of them took place at night.
And do you remember anything about, first of all, the next time it came up? Do you have any idea of when that was in relation to this winter time when you were playing Running from the Russians?
I'm sorry?
When was the next time? Do you have any idea?
Well, it was probably a month later.
Why do you
that
say that?
would be my best. Because I remember it not being exactly later, but it wasn't too far along the road. It was definitely probably about a month's time that had passed.
Did you see your cousin Eric more frequently than once or twice a month at this time?
No.
And do you recall generally what the topic was the next time it came up?
Well, it was sort of a continuation of the conversation we had in the woods. Just basically contemplating on whether it was normal or not.
Okay. And was there anything else that occurred in this conversation that you can remember? Did Eric ask you anything?
Well, I remember he told me again never to tell anybody. And I brought it up again that maybe he should let me ask my mother. And I remember him replying no. And I asked him, why didn't he let his mother know or ask his mother? You know.
Do you remember what he said when you asked why didn't he ask his mother?
Overall. Yes, I do.
What did he say?
He said that she would get mad at his father.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Now, do you recall a subsequent occasion, another occasion when this topic was being discussed between you and Eric, where he gave you some additional information about what was going on?
Yes.
And can you recall that, tell us what you can remember of that conversation?
What I can remember of that conversation is very little, but I do remember very well that he explained to me that these massages that his father was giving him were beginning to hurt.
And do you remember whether or not you understood what that meant, or?
I definitely didn't understand.
And do you recall whether or not you tried to gather any information about why massages were hurting?
I would imagine I did, but I don't remember.
Okay. Did you ask Erik straight out, why does it hurt, or how does it hurt, or what is he doing that's making you hurt?
If I did, I don't remember.
And you don't remember his ever elaborating on it?
No.
He didn't tell you anything about tacks or needles or ropes or anything
No,
like
he
that?
didn't.
Were you familiar with a nickname that your cousin Erik used to refer to himself at about this same time?
Yes, I did.
And what was that nickname?
It was Hurt Man.
Now, did he express to you in this last conversation his desire with respect to these massages with his father, what he wanted?
What his father wanted?
No, what Erik wanted.
What Erik wanted? Yeah, he told me he wanted him to stop. I remember that being the last conversation that I remember.
And was there any further discussion with him about your knowing about this?
I'm sorry, can you
Okay,
say?
in this last conversation, was there any further discussion with Erik about your knowing about what was going on with him and his dad?
Well, it was very clear that he wanted to keep it as a secret between us, and that I was never going to reveal that to anybody. And I had promised him, I had swore to him that I wouldn't. But he definitely seemed nervous.
Seemed nervous about what, Mr. Connor?
That I might tell somebody.
From what you had observed in the family, did it appear to you that Erik was afraid of his father?
Yes,
Were you afraid of his father?
I was.
Now, when you slept over at the Menendez home, did you sleep in Erik's bedroom?
Yes.
And do you recall whether or not there was a loose slat from his bed?
Yes, I do.
Was there?
Yes, there was.
And do you recall did you ever see anybody use that slat for any purpose?
Erik and I used it once to pin the door from opening. There were no locks on the doors.
So you could prop the door closed with the slat?
That's right.
And did you see that loose slat there on more than one occasion?
Yeah, there was a trundle bed under his bed that you could slide out, and usually when you pulled it out, the slat would fall, and it'd have to be placed back on.
Okay.
So I do remember it several times falling off.
And on this one occasion, you remember actually using it to prop the door.
That's right.
Did you think of that, or did Erik show you how to do it?
Erik showed me that.
Do you recall an occasion, Mr. Khanna, when you were staying at Erik's house or visiting his house, when you hurt yourself and you wanted to use something on your injury?
Yes.
And how did you hurt yourself first?
Well, Erik and I would usually go outside and play through the woods and so on.
There's Vegas at the time.
Why don't you clarify that?
Do you recall approximately how old you were at the time you're talking about when you hurt yourself?
I believe I was around 11 years old. It's the best I can do.
Okay, so if you're 11, then Erik's about 13 and a half to 14?
Right.
So you and Erik would play in the woods and you'd get hurt?
I got scratched on a log or on a branch or something. My leg did.
Okay, so what did you do about that?
Well, I wiped it off, but when we went back to his room, I remember seeing a jar of Vaseline I didn't know what it was used for or what it was then, but I figured it was a type of ointment that you put on scratches and so on.
Okay, so did you try to use it for your scratch?
I picked it up and Eric immediately told me to put it back down.
Okay, did he say anything else about it?
No, he didn't. He just said, don't touch it.
Well, did you explain why you wanted to use it?
Yes, I told him I was just going to put it on my scratch.
And did he tell you anything about that?
Yeah, he said that's not what it's for.
I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Your Honor, is there a glass of water or something? That'd be great.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Connell, how old were you when you had this alleged conversation with Erik Menendez in this field?
I believe I was 10 years old at the time.
And Erik Menendez was about 13?
He would have been going on 13. It was wintertime. Thank you very much.
And this is the first time you had ever heard of these massages?
That's right.
And when he told you that, you didn't tell anyone what he had told you?
No.
And you recall this happening in the winter sometime?
Yeah. That's right.
And the next conversation that you had with him was when?
About a month later.
And it was in the same field?
No, it was in his bedroom at home.
And he brought up the subject again?
Yes.
And was there a third conversation?
Yes, there was. Now, I know I must have brought up the conversation at least once. I remember bringing it up. I don't remember how I did.
At some point, though, you again talked to your cousin about these massages.
That's right.
And this was about how much later?
About a month later, I would say, from the first occurrence is what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's been spaced out about a month apart, these three conversations, a month each.
I'm sorry, would you ask me again?
The first conversation occurred when you were in the field. About a month later, you had a conversation with your cousin, Erik Menendez, in his bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a month after that, you had another conversation with him?
I don't remember when exactly those other two took place. But the second conversation I had was about a month later. I don't remember about the other ones, how much later they were.
And he talked about a massage that his father had given him.
That's right.
On every one of these occasions, did he talk about a massage?
I don't remember if on the third or fourth he did, but I knew by then what he was talking about, so he didn't have to let me know.
And he asked you if your father ever gave you a massage like that?
Yes, he did.
Now, did you ever tell anybody about this?
I didn't tell anybody until I told Miss Leslie Abramson.
And that was sometime after Erik Menendez was arrested for the murders of his parents?
That's right.
Now, after your cousin was arrested, did he give you his car?
His car, I'm
his
sorry?
car?
I don't believe he gave it to me. I bought it from him.
You bought it from him?
That's right.
What did you pay for it?
My mother did.
What did you pay for it?
I don't remember.
What kind of car was it?
It's a Ford Escort.
Now, when your cousin was arrested, he was 19 years old, correct?
I believe so.
And you were 16 at the time?
That's right.
So you were just starting to drive?
That's right.
Now, it's your understanding that you bought that car?
Yes, my mother, I believe, bought it.
You don't know that, though?
No, I do know that.
You know that she bought it?
Yes.
And do you have any idea of what she paid for it then?
I have no idea.
Now, your cousin was a good friend of yours, right?
Yes, he was. And is.
And is? And I believe your mother had testified that she would lie for the brothers. Would you also do that?
Objection, Your Honor, states the testimony were it's improper.
It's argumentative. Objection sustained.
Would you lie for Erik Menendez?
I am not lying for him now, and I wouldn't lie for anybody under oath.
You would not?
I would not, Mr. Crayon.
And you never told anyone this until after your cousin was arrested?
That's right.
Now, there's been testimony that you accompanied Erik Menendez from Florida to Los Angeles after he came back from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Did he tell you that he was involved in the killings of his parents on that plane flight from Florida to Los Angeles?
No, we talked for a while, but it was mostly concerning of how he was doing. I don't recall too much of that conversation. He wasn't. He was very upset. He was very emotional, and he wasn't in the mood to talk about anything.
Where did you meet him? Did you meet him in Florida somewhere?
In Miami. In Miami. That's right.
Did he come to your house?
No, he didn't. I flew from New Jersey, I believe, and I met him in Miami, and from there he had flown in. I don't know where he flew in from, but from there we flew right back into LA. And there were, all the way from Miami to LA, there were people, I don't know who they were, assigned to us to watch out and to make sure that he was put on the plane. There was always somebody with us.
Now, when you say somebody was with you, who are you talking about?
I wouldn't know if to call them detectives or policemen, but they were there to make sure that Erik got on the plane and went to LA.
Were they Miami police officers?
At one point, I believe they were, because I remember them putting us in a private room, and I would figure they were from Miami.
So the way that it happened then is, did you arrive at the Miami airport first?
No, I probably arrived, I don't know if a day before, I'm sorry, in the West Palm airport where my mom picked me up. That's the best of my recollection, but to be honest, I don't remember much.
So you arrived the day before your cousin arrived at the West Palm airport?
I don't know. I don't know if it was a day before or 2 days before. I really can't tell you.
Well, in any event, you were there before your cousin arrived.
That's right.
And when your cousin arrived, you met him?
That's right.
And how much time did you spend with him prior to actually getting onto the plane?
An hour, maybe. I don't know.
And during that period of time, there were police officers that were making sure that your cousin got on the plane.
That's right.
Flight for Los Angeles.
My mother was also with us.
Did your mother also accompany your cousin and you to Los Angeles?
Yes, she did.
On that flight?
Yes, she did.
Did you all sit together?
Yes.
Was there ever any conversation between you and your cousin on that plane flight to Los Angeles from Florida?
Was there any conversation?
Yes.
I'm sure there was.
And what was the nature of that conversation?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
State of mind, right?
Well, this is
Why don't you approach here and we'll discuss it.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Mr. Cano, did you and Erik Menendez discuss the killing of his parents?
Not that I recall, no.
Not at all on this plane flight?
Might have been brought up, but he didn't tell me that he did it, and he didn't give me an answer to very much at all.
When you say he didn't give you an answer, did you ask him whether he was involved in the killings of his parents?
I might have. I don't recall.
You might have asked him that.
I might have asked him that. And I don't think he gave me an answer.
Would you have remembered if he gave you an answer?
Overall.
I don't know. I don't remember now.
Would that have been something important for you to remember?
Yes, it would have.
You would have wanted to know if he had been involved in the killing of his parents, I take it.
I would have wanted to know.
Yes,
Yeah.
speak up.
I would have wanted to know, sure.
In fact, you believe that he may have been involved. That's why you asked him whether he was involved?
To be honest with you, Mr. Kuriyama, I don't even remember asking him. Mostly what I was concerned with was his well-being. I knew from recent talks with Erik that he was suicidal. And that's what I was worried about. I was worrying about him. And I remember one time on the airplane, he locked himself in the bathroom for about an hour. It seemed to me like an hour. I was waiting and waiting and waiting for him to come out. And I went and knocked because I was very worried about what he might have done in that bathroom.
Did you believe at that time that he was having a guilty conscience about killing his parents?
I didn't believe anything. I just believed that I was very worried about him.
Being worried about him being suicidal, did you suspect that he had been involved in the killings of his parents?
I suspected it.
Did Erik Menendez indicate to you that he was upset with his father?
Objection on it, Vegas time.
Sustained. Objection sustained.
Do you recall in these conversations that you had in which Erik Menendez expressed that he was suicidal? When did these conversations take place?
I don't remember. I knew about it. Like I said, we were very close. I knew about some of his problems.
You're talking about on the flight to Los Angeles? Is that?
I'm trying to ascertain when it was that these conversations took place, actually.
Wait, Your Honor, it's still vague. I don't know what conversations he's talking about.
Sustained. Why don't you rephrase the question?
Mr. Connell, I believe you testified that you had conversations with your cousin in which he expressed that he felt suicidal.
That's right.
When did that occur?
I don't remember. This is all about 5-6 years ago, Ms. Graham. I couldn't tell you. All I can remember is what I have placed in my mind here. And there were certain things that stuck out in my mind that I do remember very well. And there were others that I just don't know where and how they happened.
Can we specify 5 or 6 years ago? What date are you referring to?
I'm not referring to any date. I'm just referring it was a long time ago.
What time frame? What incident was occurring at that time?
I think he's talking about the conversations about suicidal type of thing.
Was that before the flight from Miami to Los Angeles or after?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
That was before some time?
Before the flight from Miami to LA, yes.
Okay, and what is your best memory of where and when that occurred?
Maybe a phone call. He might have called me somewhere. I don't know. When he moved to LA, I moved to Puerto Rico to Florida. So we didn't keep in touch as much, but as much as we could, we would. And I had talked to him several times throughout the years that he was living in LA.
And during that period of time, he called you and told you, I feel suicidal?
We had some really in-depth conversations. We were very close still, even though we were separated.
And in
Was this before or after the death of Jose?
It was before.
Luis Menendez. Before?
It was before.
So in these conversations that you had with the defendant, Erik Menendez, before he killed his parents, he told you that he was suicidal, correct?
Yes, he did.
And you said he got into some in-depth discussions about problems he was having. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that would be fair to say.
Would he describe for you problems that he was having specifically with his father?
I don't remember. I really don't. Like I said, there's certain things that stick out in my head, and the others I just don't remember.
You have a very good memory of what he told you when you were 9 years old?
Yes, I do.
Misstates the testimony.
Overall.
Is that correct, sir?
I could say I have a good memory of what the subject of the conversation was. I don't know exactly, every step of the way of the conversation.
Okay, let's just try to get to what you do recall. Now, if your cousin had called you in Puerto Rico from Los Angeles and had said, I'm suicidal, would that have been something that got your interest?
Well, he called me to Florida, but
Okay.
that would have been something that got my interest, definitely.
So that would be something that you would recall.
Yes.
And what do you recall about that, sir?
I just remember him telling me. I don't remember where and what phone call. I was in my house in West Palm Beach, most likely. I just know that I knew that he had a lot of problems with himself and with his family and was suicidal.
And
or he felt that he was.
What is it that he expressed to you, the nature of the problems?
I don't remember.
Did you say, well, why are you suicidal?
If I did, I don't remember.
Would that be a question that would be a logical question to ask of your cousin?
Objection on hearing.
Sustained.
You don't recall asking him any questions?
I don't recall.
Now, you asked him about these alleged massages, correct?
That's right.
And you wanted to know in detail what occurred there?
Not in detail. He would never give me any details. We basically were always trying to figure out if what was happening to him was normal. And I had no way of knowing, like I said.
And then when he told you later on when he was in Los Angeles about the problems he was having with his parents, you never asked him the nature of those problems?
Of which problems? I'm
The
sorry.
problems that when he called you when you were in Florida and he was in Los Angeles, you never said, well, what kind of problems are you having?
I don't remember.
Don't recall
I really
that at all?
don't. I can't say for sure.
When you flew from Florida to Los Angeles, just prior to when your cousin was arrested for the murders of his parents, you had the information from Erik Menendez. He had called you previously from Los Angeles regarding the problems that he was having with his parents, correct?
I'm going to object on it. Misstates the witness's testimony.
Rephrase the question, please.
Okay. You recall that you've testified that Erik Menendez called you in Florida and told you that he was having problems with his parents.
Objection, that's what misstates it. He said problems with himself and his family.
All right, rephrase the question.
You testified that you got a call from Erik Menendez in Florida that Erik was having problems with his family. Is that right?
Objection, misstates the testimony.
Overruled.
Can you ask the question one more time, Mr. Correa? I'm sorry. So many
Yes.
questions, I'm confused.
Now, you've testified that when Erik Menendez moved to Los Angeles, he would call you periodically when you're in Florida, correct?
He did call me periodically.
And on at least one of those occasions, he told you that he was suicidal, correct?
Yes, I believe that's how I knew it.
And on at least one occasion, he told you that he was having problems with his family. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And it's your testimony that you never asked and you don't know what the nature of those problems were?
I don't remember. We would talk pretty in-depthly about a lot of things, and there was a lot of problems in my life that I would talk to him about as well. So I was pretty distracted, if I would talk to him.
Were you having problems with your family as well?
I don't remember. I'm sure I've always had problems. Everybody always has problems, so I would talk to him about what was on my mind.
Would you discuss, were you ever suicidal?
No,
All right, I'm going to object at this point. We've gotten pretty far afield.
Sustained.
On this plane ride from Florida to Los Angeles, you had indicated that you suspected that your cousin had been involved in the killings of his parents, correct?
That's right.
And you made a comment to him. Would you describe for the jury how your cousin reacted to your question about whether he was involved?
Misstates his testimony.
Be more specific, again, counsel, just state your legal objection. Be more specific as to what you mean, Mr. Correa.
Okay. Do you recall, Mr. Cano, Erik Menendez's reaction to your inquiry as to whether he was involved in the killing of his parents?
I don't recall, Ms. Graham. I don't recall anything about that plane ride. I was very emotional, and so was he.
You were thinking enough to ask him whether or not he was involved in the killings, though.
Objective argument and misstates the witness's testimony.
Overruled.
Is that right, sir?
I'm sorry.
You were thinking and clear-headed enough to ask your cousin whether he was involved in the killings.
I don't remember.
Now, what did your mother in your presence ever ask Erik Menendez whether he was involved in the killings of his parents?
If she did.
Pause for hearsay.
Sustained. The answer is true.
During the period of time when you returned with Erik Menendez back to Los Angeles, you took the plane ride from Florida to Los Angeles, and what is that, like a 5-hour flight?
Yes.
And then you touched down at LAX, correct?
As far as I can remember, I don't think it was a connecting flight. I really doubt it, but it definitely touched down at LAX if that's where we landed. I think so.
When you arrived at LAX, were there any instructions given to you by your cousin?
None.
None? And have you visited your cousin in jail?
I have.
And you visited him with your mother?
Yes.
About how many times?
Ooh. That's hard to say. As best I can remember, maybe 4 times I visited him. 4 or 5, I don't know. Somewhere around that number.
And did you ever discuss the pending case that he had in this matter?
No. It was very brief when I ever got to see him. It was only 20 minutes. And I would have to split that time with my mother. My main concern was how he was doing.
During these visits, did he ever tell you that he indeed was the killer of his parents with his brother?
No, he didn't tell me that.
He never told you that?
No.
I have nothing further this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Mr. Connor, was it significant to you when you were a kid, when you were 10 or 11, that your cousin Erik had sworn you to secrecy about something?
Yes, it was.
Is that like something boys do, blood brothers and swearing secrecy?
Sort of like a pinky promise.
Sort of like a pinky promise. And did Erik make this the strongest pinky promise you ever had to make?
It wasn't a pinky promise, but it was definitely very intense, and I would have never told anybody.
Was your friendship with Erik when you were a little guy special to you?
Yes, it was.
Now, do you remember a time when you were living in Florida, when you were thinking about moving to Puerto Rico to live with your dad?
Yes.
Objection irrelevant.
I will tie it up, Your Honor, if I can. Okay. Do you remember receiving a call from Erik about that time when you were thinking about moving to Puerto Rico?
Actually beyond the scope of
Overall.
Yes, I remember a call around that.
And do you remember in that phone call, Erik telling you then that he was very upset, suicidal, and wanted to come live with you in Florida?
I don't remember the exact nature of the conversation, but I remember in that conversation he did tell me that he wanted to come live with me in Florida because he was having problems at home.
Okay.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
And do you recall what your response to him was?
Yes.
What was it?
Okay. I told him that at that point I was thinking of moving to Puerto Rico, but that if I didn't know whether my father would mind if he would have wanted to come down there with me.
Now, did you wind up moving to Puerto Rico?
Yes, I did.
irrelevant.
Overall.
Yes, I did.
Now, do you recall after your aunt and uncle were killed, did you see Erik back east?
After my aunt and uncle were killed?
Yes.
I saw him at the funeral.
Okay. And did you see him even after the week of the funeral on other trips he made back east before he was arrested?
Yeah, I saw him several times.
You had sisters who still live in the Princeton area?
Yes, that's true.
And were you in the Princeton area apart from attending the memorial service or the funeral, were you in the Princeton area in 1989 in the fall?
Yes, I attended the Hunt School of Princeton, which is in Princeton, New Jersey.
So you were actually living there then?
That's right.
And did you see your cousin Erik on visits he made there?
Yes, I did. I don't recall that he made too many, but or at least I didn't see him too many times. But the times I did, I'd spend a little bit of time with him.
Okay. Now, you said that when you were on the airplane with him, you were concerned about him because you knew that he had felt suicidal in the past.
That's right.
And does that relate only to the distant past before his parents died? Or did you have any information about his feeling suicidal after they died?
Well, that feeling that I had began before they died.
And had you received any information after they died that led you to believe that he was feeling suicidal?
Well, knowing Erik as a friend, I knew that that was definitely possible, and going through whatever he went through was hard enough for him that I thought that maybe he would.
Now, you said that the plane ride here from Florida was very emotional. Were you aware at that time that your cousin Lyle Menendez was in jail?
Yes.
And was it your expectation that as soon as Erik got to Los Angeles, he too would be locked up?
Yes.
And based on anything that was said, was that Erik's understanding he was going back to go to jail?
That's right. He knew that very well.
When Erik was a teenager, did he, strike that, after Erik moved to California, did he ever bring up the molestation by his father to you again?
No.
Did you ever broach the subject again?
No.
When he would make reference to problems in the family, was he ever specific about what was going on that you can recall?
No. I don't recall any details. He would just say something like, things with my parents are going really badly. Something to that effect.
Did you know that there was talk of potential divorce in that family in 1986 and 1987?
I really didn't know much about his family. They're very private people.
From what you had observed being around them over the years, did you think that it would be difficult for a kid to be in that family?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
How did you think it would be to be a child of that family based on what you saw?
I definitely.
Question calls for speculation.
Objection sustained.
Did you have any difficulty in understanding Erik when he said he had problems with those parents?
No, I didn't.
Did you think they were problem parents?
Objection calls for public opinion.
Sustained.
Did you think that you would have problems living with your Uncle Jose and your Aunt Kitty?
Irrelevant.
Sustained.
When Erik would tell you that he was having problems, did you ask him to elaborate?
If I did, I don't recall. I'm sure I must have at some point.
Did you ever envy him or wish you could live in with his family?
Objection
No.
irrelevant.
Sustained. Answer strict.
You said that the family was very private.
Objection, this is beyond.
Yes, I did.
The objection is sustained. The answer strict.
He's already testified to it without objection.
Well, just because of that doesn't open up the area. Objection sustained.
During the flight from Miami, you said your mother was sitting next to you.
Yes, she was.
Did she appear to be concerned with Erik's well-being?
Definitely.
Now, you said that I was the first person that you relayed the conversations about the molestation to. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And do you remember when it was that you first told me?
I don't remember the date, no.
Do you remember the month and the year?
No, I don't.
January 9th.
Objection, meeting.
I haven't heard the question yet.
Excuse me?
What was your question?
The question was, would January 1991 refresh your recollection? I told you that's when I first met you.
That's right. That's right.
And as of January 1991, were you under 18?
Yes, I was.
And when you were under 18, were you prohibited from visiting your cousin in the county jail?
That is true.
And did you ever strike that? Did you visit him then before you told me or only after you told me?
Only after I told you.
I have nothing further.
Any further cross?
Any motion?
Your Honor, it'd be okay if I get some more wine.
Sure, we'll get it for you.
Thanks.
Mr. Connell,
Oh, thanks.
before January of 1991, your cousin had been in the jail for about 8 months.
Yes, that's right.
You flew back from Florida about March of 1990.
I flew in with him. That was the only time that I can remember.
And did you have any discussions with any relatives about the nature of the defense in this case?
Objection, Your Honor. Personal vague at the time.
Objection sustained.
Did you get any calls, first of all, from Erik Menendez after he was incarcerated in the Los Angeles County Jail?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't remember any, so no.
Have you ever had any conversations with him after he was incarcerated?
Talk about phone calls?
Yes.
I believe I might have talked to him a couple times. Maybe, I don't remember where. I don't know.
So, in these conversations after your cousin was incarcerated in the Los Angeles County Jail, what was the nature of those conversations?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay. No foundation.
Well, it's
Admission.
vague as to which conversations you're referring to, counsel.
Okay. Why don't you describe?
You're referring to conversations between the defendant and the witness?
Yes.
At the county jail?
No, over the phone, after the defendant was incarcerated in the county jail.
Why don't you ask it so that we know what you're talking about?
I'm sorry. You understand that after your cousin was incarcerated in the county jail in March of 1990, he called you on the phone. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Vague as to time.
Objection to the question. Did he ever call you after he was arrested?
Yes, he called me.
And where did you receive those phone calls?
I think I talked to him once in my house, or my mother's house in West Palm Beach.
And do you recall staying for a time in Los Angeles after your cousin was arrested? That is, when you came on the flight from Miami to Los Angeles, did you immediately turn around and go back to Miami?
I might have stayed a couple days. I don't remember.
Now, did you have any conversations? Or where were you staying after you arrived in Los Angeles, after the defendant was arrested?
After he was arrested,
Yes.
I believe I was staying in the Beverly Hills home.
Okay. So during that period of time that when you were there at the Beverly Hills home, did you receive any calls from the defendant?
I didn't know.
You don't know?
No, I did not.
You did not?
No.
Was there anyone else with you at that house during that period of time?
My grandmother and my mother. I believe.
Now, think back on this call that you got from the defendant at your home in Florida.
Uh-huh.
What was said by the defendant in that conversation?
Absolutely.
Overall.
I don't remember the nature of the conversation. I was mainly concerned with how he was doing and how he was spending the time.
Had you, at that point, heard the evidence against him? That is, had you read any articles about the case?
I don't think I'd read any articles. I might have watched the news.
So after watching the news, did you also have discussions with relatives about the case?
No.
No.
I never ever discussed anything really with relatives. It wasn't something we wanted to bring up.
Did you ever talk to your mother about this case?
No.
Never?
I've talked to her about, friends or other things that might have happened, but never about the context of the case.
Okay, let's just get this straight. You've talked about friends and other things, but you've never talked about this case with your mother over the past 4 years?
Well, I'm sure I've talked to her several times, but not about the defense, if that's what you're implying.
You never talked?
I'm not sure I'm understanding you, Ms. Graham.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to my questioning. Is ABM, so be calling for hearsay.
Well, it's unfocused, so let's see if we can pinpoint it a little bit, Mr. Kuriyama, and see if we can finish this. Objection sustained.
Mr. Kano, is it your testimony that from the time that Erik Menendez was arrested in March of 1990 to today, as you sit there on the witness stand, that you've not talked to your mother about this case?
I'm sure I have.
And what have you talked to her about?
I don't
Objection on a
remember.
call for hearsay.
Sustained.
I don't remember. I never revealed
Okay,
to her.
wait, just wait for another question. So,
Have you, this goes to your state of mind, have you gotten information about the nature of this case over the past 4 years?
And I'm going to object to that. It's irrelevant.
sustained.
Mr. Kano, the only conversations that you really remember are the ones that you had with your cousin about these alleged massages. That'd be fair to say?
Those are the ones that stick out in my head, yes.
You don't remember anything about the suicide calls or anything after the defendant called you after he was arrested? You don't remember the nature of any of those calls?
Objection, it's compounded on the matter.
It's been asked and answered.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, anything else?
No.
All right, you may step down. Thank you. You're excused. Thank you. We'll be in recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Please don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I'll ask that counsel, I'll order that you be here at 8:45 with your next witness so that we can start promptly at 9 o'clock, so that there won't be any delays. We'll start promptly at 9 o'clock. All right, we'll see you back here tomorrow at 9.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
David Mravich,
Spell your last name, please.
Mraovitch.
Mr. Mravich, am I saying your name correctly?
Close enough.
How old are you?
22?
And do you go to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
I go to University of Pennsylvania,
What are you studying?
philosophy and psychology.
And do you know Erik Menendez, who's sitting in court in the turquoise sweater?
Yes.
When did you first meet Erik Menendez?
In 8th grade,
And where were you, what school were you attending in the 8th grade?
Princeton Day School.
And was Erik also attending Princeton Day School when you met him?
Yes.
Was he in the same grade as you or a different grade?
Same grade.
What year was it, if you recall, that you first met Erik?
What year was 8th grade?
Yes.
I guess 85, 84.
Okay. In the 8th grade, you would have been about 14?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that yes?
Yes.
Did you also know Erik Menendez in the 9th grade?
Yes.
And were you still attending PDS in the 9th grade?
Yes.
Were you friends with Erik Menendez?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Mravich, I'm going to direct your attention to an incident that occurred in the 9th grade when you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles with Erik and his mother. Do you have that incident in mind?
Yes.
And do you remember what time it was during the school year that you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles with Erik and his mother?
Yes.
What time was it?
Spring.
And was there a particular reason why you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles at that time?
Yes.
And what was that reason?
Eric was getting his moped license.
Now, in New Jersey, is it your understanding that youngsters under the age of 16 are allowed to get a license to drive a moped?
Yes.
When you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles, did Eric have to take some sort of a test?
Yes.
And did you observe him take that test?
Yes.
What kind of a test did you see him take?
He had to ride his moped around a track, and he had to perform certain activities. He had to stop and make a signal and do whatever the guy said.
Okay. Was there was a man who was administering this test?
Yes.
And when you watched Eric take this test, was his mother present?
Yes.
And did she also appear to be watching him take the test?
Yes.
How long did the test take?
It took about 15 minutes.
Okay. And after the test, did someone come over to inform Mrs. Menendez of whether Erik Menendez passed or failed?
Yes.
Who came over to give her that information?
The DMV person.
And did he tell her that Eric passed the test or failed
He
the
told her
test?
that he failed the test.
And did he tell her why he failed the test?
Yes.
Why did he say he failed the
He
test?
said that Eric put his foot down when he wasn't supposed to.
Okay, now, how did Mrs. Menendez react to receiving this news that Eric hadn't passed the test?
She was very angry. She got very upset.
What did she do? Describe what you saw, please.
She started yelling at the DMV person and said that Eric did everything correctly and that there was no reason why he shouldn't have passed.
Okay. When you say yelling, are you telling us that she raised her voice?
She was getting very upset and practically screaming at the guy.
Was this in Eric's presence?
No.
Okay. Right. And how long did this go on?
For about 5 minutes.
Now, you said that Mrs. Menendez had told the DMV person that Eric had done everything correctly and shouldn't have failed the test.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Moravich, had you watched Eric take this particular test?
Yes.
And did you see whether or not Eric had put his foot on the ground as the DMV man described?
Yes, I saw it.
And did he put his foot on the
Yes,
ground?
he did.
So what was Mrs. Menendez then not telling the truth to the DMV man that she was screaming at?
Objection calls for speculation, representation.
Did Mrs. Menendez, did her comments to the DMV man, were those inconsistent with what you knew to have happened?
Objection calls for speculation.
Did the incident at the Department of Motor Vehicles involving Mrs. Menendez and Eric make an impression on you?
Objection irrelevant.
Is there a particular reason why you remember that incident now?
Yes.
Irrelevant.
That answer will stand.
Okay. And what is the reason why you remember that incident now?
Objection irrelevant.
I'm going to ask that you direct your attention to November of 1989. Where were you living then?
In November of '89, I was
Yes.
living at Brandeis University campus.
And were you going to school at Brandeis University?
Yes,
What year were you in at Brandeis?
it's my freshman year.
Did you at some point in November of 1989 receive a phone call from Erik Menendez?
Yes,
Okay, and during a particular phone call in November of 1989, did Erik extend an invitation to you?
yes, yes.
Okay, what did he say?
He
Where
asked,
did he invite you?
he invited me to Cancun
And where's Cancun?
in Mexico.
And when he invited you to go to Cancun, was that a convenient time for you to leave school?
No,
Why not?
I had classes. It meant cutting classes.
Did you agree to go to Cancun with Erik?
Yes,
And why was it that you agreed to leave school at that time and go to Cancun with Erik?
because Erik said that he needed a friend to talk to.
And that was why he had asked you to join him.
Yes,
How did you get to Cancun?
I took a plane.
And was this a ticket that you bought yourself?
No,
Who paid for the ticket?
Erik did.
Now, how long were you in Cancun?
For a week.
And during the week that you were in Cancun, did Erik talk with you regarding a therapist
Yes,
that he was seeing?
yes.
And what did he tell you about the therapist that he was seeing?
He said that he was seeing a therapist and that somebody had chosen this therapist for him.
Let me stop you. Did he say who had chosen the therapist for him?
No,
He told you that this wasn't someone that he had decided upon or chose himself. Is that correct?
Objection, waiting.
can you repeat the question?
He told you that this therapist was not someone that he had chosen or decided upon himself.
Yes.
And what else did he say about the therapist that was chosen for him?
He said that he was trying to tell the therapist things to make him feel better, but that the therapist was more interested in his financial affairs than he was in making him feel better.
And when Erik talked about making him feel better, did you understand that to mean making him feel better about the deaths of his parents?
Yes.
During the time that you saw Erik in Cancun, how would you describe his emotional state?
Yeah. When I first got down there, he seemed pretty upset. He seemed kind of out of it, and just needed to talk to somebody who he felt he could trust.
And did he appear to trust you?
Yes.
Did he tell you that?
Yes.
Now, you said that when you first arrived, Erik was upset and out of it. Did his mood change during the trip?
Yeah, he got better.
When you say he got better, what do you mean?
I mean, I was trying to cheer him up, and I think it worked.
Okay. Was there any change in Erik's mood towards the end of the trip when he was about to go back to Los Angeles and you were about to go back to Brandeis?
Yeah, he seemed wary of going home.
I'm sorry.
He seemed wary of going home.
When you say wary, what do you mean?
He seemed like he knew he had to deal with a lot of pressure, a lot of unusual circumstances.
I'm going to move to strike everything after 18 being a conclusion on the part of the witness without foundation.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
When Did he say or do anything that made you think he was wary of going home?
Well, he told me that he had a lot of pressure to deal with when he got home.
Okay. Now, did he say anything else during the visit about the therapist and his feelings about him?
Yes.
And what did he say?
He said he didn't trust him.
Did he explain why he didn't trust the therapist?
He said that the therapist was only interested in, or was primarily interested in his financial affairs and what he was doing with his money, and not with helping him.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
And did Eric indicate to you at that point in time that he needed help?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. In fact, that was your understanding of the reason why you were invited to go to Cancun.
Yes, exactly.
May I just have a moment, Your Honor? Returning for a minute to the DMV incident with Mrs. Menendez, was the behavior that you saw her engaging in at that time unusual behavior for her?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained on the question.
Okay. Had you seen Mrs. Menendez during the 2 years that you were friends with Eric in 8th and 9th grade?
Yes.
Okay. About how many times?
About 6 or 7 times.
Okay. And during the 6 or 7 times that you saw her, were you able to observe the way she reacted with her son and other people?
13-352.
Yes.
Okay. And was the incident at the DMV, was that unusual behavior in your experience with her, or was that normal?
It was very unusual.
So it stuck out in your mind.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Moravich, is that close enough?
Close enough.
Okay. The behavior that you saw Mrs. Menendez display at the DMV, you said it was unusual.
Yes.
Okay. How did she normally behave towards you?
She didn't really behave towards me at all. She was, most of the time, she acted like she didn't even notice I was there.
Was she ever cruel to you while you were at the Menendez home?
No.
Was she ever mean to you, or did she ever strike you or anything?
No.
But on this particular day, you remember her behavior because she was angry with the man at the DMV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe you indicated that you actually saw Erik Menendez put his foot down, which was what the DMV man was complaining about, correct?
Yes.
Did you see him do anything else wrong while he was taking his moped test?
No.
Now, this trip to Cancun came at an inconvenient time for you because you were in your first semester of your freshman year, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember what part of November it was that you went to Cancun? Was it the beginning, the middle, or the end?
I believe it was the beginning.
Do you remember approximately when? Like what day?
What day of the week?
Sure, that would be helpful.
I think it was a Sunday or a Monday that I left. I think I got back the next weekend, Saturday.
All right, so you were there about 6 or 7 nights. I'm sorry, say that again. You left on a Sunday or Monday and you got back the following?
Following Friday or Saturday.
All right, so you were there 5 or 6 nights.
Yes.
All right. Now, during this period of time, did Erik Menendez ever talk to you about the night that his parents were killed?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about the night that his parents were killed?
Objection, or still overruled.
Can you repeat the question?
What did Erik Menendez tell you while you were in Cancun about the night that his parents were killed in August of 1989?
He said that he saw his parents dead.
Did he ever indicate to you during your trip in Cancun that he had been responsible for the death of his parents?
No.
Did he ever in any way indicate to you that he wanted to tell you something about his participation in the killing of his parents?
I don't recall.
Do you recall during your trip in Cancun feeling suspicious that perhaps he was involved?
Objection on cause for speculation.
Mr. Moravich, I believe you indicated that Erik Menendez got you to go on the Cancun trip because he really needed someone to talk to, someone he could trust. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that during the time that you were there, he indicated to you that he'd been talking to a therapist who he didn't trust, correct?
Correct.
Did he tell you that he confessed his participation in the killings of his parents to this therapist?
No.
Did he tell you that his brother had threatened the therapist?
No.
Did he tell you that the therapist had made some tapes to protect himself from the Menendez brothers?
No.
So during the time that you were with him in Cancun, did he portray himself as someone who had merely found his parents' dead bodies the night of August the 20th?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overall. He didn't portray himself in any particular way. In fact, I tried to avoid the subject of his parents' death because I was trying to make him feel better.
Right, but during the course of your week or your 5 or 6 nights in Cancun, he did talk to you about that night, did he not?
Yes, but very briefly.
And what did he tell you? That he come home and found his parents dead, is that correct?
He told me that he saw his parents dead.
Right, and he didn't give you any other information about what he'd done that night, is that correct?
That's correct.
And by telling you that he'd found his parents dead, did he lead you to believe that he was not involved in their killings?
Objection. This states the testimony calls for speculation.
Calls for opinion. Objections.
Sir, on August the 21st of 1989, the day after Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed, did you talk to Erik Menendez on the phone?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope, and I'd ask to approach.
All right.
Sir, during the time that you were with Erik Menendez in Cancun, did he ever talk to you about how he felt about his father?
No.
Did he ever talk to you about any problems he'd been having with his father prior to his father's death?
In Cancun?
Yes.
No.
Did he ever talk to you about how he felt about his mother during the trip in Cancun?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
And what did he tell you about his mother?
He said he was very upset about his mother.
Now, I believe you indicated that one of the reasons that you left your first semester at school and went to join Erik Menendez is because he indicated to you that he really needed someone to talk to, correct?
Yes.
And he needed someone he could trust.
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Did he ever tell you that between the ages of 6 and 18, his father had been sexually abusing him?
No.
And he never told you during that trip that he had participated in the killings of his parents, did he?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
He never told you that, did he?
No.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Couple questions, John. Mr. Maravich, did Erik in Cancun tell you that he was very upset about his mother's death?
Yes.
And did he in fact talk about his mother in Cancun as if she was still alive, using the present tense?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further. Well, maybe not. Mr. Maravich, returning for a moment to the conversations about the therapist, Was there any particular thing that you remember that the therapist was trying to do that was making Erik not trust him?
Objection calls for speculation.
Rephrase the question.
Did Erik tell you about any particular thing the therapist was doing that made Erik not trust him?
Objection beyond scope.
Yes.
And what was it that he told you?
He said that he wanted to know what he was doing with his money and how he was planning to use it.
Did what Erik told you, well, did it appear that the therapist was inappropriately involved in Erik's financial affairs?
Objection calls for a conclusion on the part of the witness.
Did Erik tell you that he felt the therapist's desires to be involved in his financial affairs made him feel any certain way?
He asked me what I thought of it. He didn't know what to make of it.
And that was, again, one of the reasons why Erik didn't trust the therapist.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you. May I sit down? You're excused. Let me see counsel, please.